2024. Time is 4:02 p.m. Board members in attendance. Director Bankus, Jurgensen, Hafley, Carey, Director Art, and Mayor Packham. Director Nelson is excused from today's meeting. Superintendent Gall and his team are also here. We possibly will have several external community partners joining us later this evening, and they will introduce themselves as we proceed with the agenda for this evening. The first item on the agenda today is the Summer Bridge and Jumpstart update. Just to give some context and set up this agenda item, the Summer Bridge, the district has been doing this for the last several years, and primarily to close academic gaps in our students and also to stop the learning loss over the summer break. This was even more critical coming out of the pandemic, COVID, and for the last 3 or 4 years, we were able to use the federal ESSER dollars to fund a robust Summer Bridge program. And we've had Summer Bridge at various levels over the past 3 or 4 years. The first year coming out of the pandemic, I think it was the 21 summer, just about every district level school was participating, and progressively based on the demands and needs, some corrections have been made along the way. This summer, if I'm right, is the last year we can fund the Summer Bridge through the federal COVID money. Starting next year, this program will have to be funded by general fund dollars. Today, we are getting a report from the superintendent's team on the most recent Summer Bridge program that transpired this summer, major highlights and takeaways for the board. Today's presentation is purely informational for the board and overall feedback from the board. No action necessary at this point in time. The district is also in the process of putting together a Summer Bridge design team to bring some recommendations to the board on what Summer Bridge will look like next year and going forth. At that point, when after that design team comes with that recommendations, at that point in time, the board will have to lean in and make some decisions based on the recommendations that's presented to the board, especially concerning investment of general fund dollars. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Gall. Superintendent Gall, welcome to the work session. To you to set up the Summer Bridge update.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick couple of statements. I'll turn it over to Tamara and then Brenda to go through the slides and the details. The bottom line is to the community, if you give us your children, we will get them more learning. Time and quality are the two indicators of how you can increase the learning for each child, and the extension of time is proven. You'll see data in here that shows that when we get kids 4 weeks, 6 weeks for specific high leverage standards and or credit recovery, we can make up learning that has been lost over the first period of that year that had been measured before. Where we still need area of growth is in that message landing with our community. We were very direct in our communications this year to take students that we thought would benefit from this extension in learning, and you will see based upon invites to actual attendees, the community is not responding with they think that is a value proposition. And then the other part of that is we're out of ESSER dollars, so now the budgets are much tighter. You will see that this was a smaller cost program with about the same number of kids that could be supported, but we went to more consolidated locations. But we've put some stronger fiscal constraints on it going forward that we'll have to design around. But the bottom line is extensions of learning work. The question is how do we get them targeted specifically to the children that are going to benefit the most from that extension of learning at the least dollar cost to the district going forward. Tamara?
Yeah, I would just add, highlight, double underscore, it is really important that we offer extended school year, which is really what this is intending to do, right? Extending the school year so that we can maintain and hopefully increase in some cases where students are at academically. It is very clear that students that are at grade level and beyond are able to access higher levels of coursework. And I'll just say, you know, I'm feeling a little connection just with having a recent student that's just graduated, was a senior last year, just took him to college and finishing that up this week. And I gotta tell you, he had an advantage because he was able to be at grade level and beyond. He was able to be in gifted coursework and take highly rigorous coursework because of that. And so in his first year in college, he didn't have to take certain credits because he passed AP exams, rigorous coursework, to be able to have a lighter load and get credit towards towards his major. That we want, anybody who wants that opportunity, we want them to be able to have.
That's right.
It is really, really important for us to be able to provide these opportunities. We have a multi-tiered strategy to ensure that we're getting kids access to grade level and beyond content, and we have to have an extended school year as part of the portfolio of services for our students to be able to ensure that they have access to those opportunities. So you are going to see, like, everything we you know, this is a brief presentation, but it is like we have delivered on the promises that we said we would do for changes in this year's this past summer's summer bridge. We are seeing results from that. We are never satisfied complete with results, even though they're in the right direction, because we have to continue to do the work. But it is showing from the summer bridge from last year, the summer bridge from this year, we are seeing that we are stopping learning loss. We are having some increase, and year over year we're seeing CMAS growth as well, and increase in improvement on that as well. And Summer Bridge is part of that work. I want to thank the team for their work, including our Director of Expanded Academic Learning, Brenda Durant. She has a member of her team as well here, Julie Odell, who's right in the back. Thank you for her work as well. And then, so Brenda will lead off. And then to go through data, we have our Chief of Ed Insights, Dr. Colicky.
Ready? Thank you, Board of Directors, Superintendent Gall, and Board President Dr. Mel Peckham for allowing me to come back to present to you one more time. I don't get to see you very often, but it's a pleasure when I do. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we did this summer bridge year, which I'm proud to announce that we exposed students to a lot of academic and enrichment opportunities to be able to explore core subject academic areas through student engagement, and to give them great experiences to want them to come back to Summer Bridge each day. So nothing has changed in terms of our focus of what Summer Bridge we are hoping that it does to reduce the learning loss from students leaving us in May to beginning in August. It also helps teachers prepare curriculum for the upcoming school year so that they don't have to spend so much time reviewing skills. So this slide right here will represent the differences from 2023 to 2024, which Tamara did explain how we met our promises. We did fulfill those. So we went from 24 Summer Bridge sites to 15. I really am proud of what we did with academics, because we took the high leverage standards that we had been using for Summer Bridge probably for 3 years, probably 4. We really examined those with the help of a cadre of principals and teachers that came together to identify skills in both literacy and math. We also had help from Philip Hutcherson to do that really deep with math. In addition, we had groups come together, committee of teachers come together to design units for math, identify those Eureka modules based on the skills that Philip Hutcherson helped us identify. We aligned those to the revised high leverage standards, and we also created end of unit assessments for Eureka, which you will see the data that we collected, which were paper pencil assessments, again developed by principals and teachers. you'll see the growth that was made in many of our schools. So this coming year, depending on what our design team focus looks like, we'd like to also extend that same type of professional development opportunities for literacy like we did for math. So we can really dig deep into that academic curriculum, high leverage standard focus. So our student enrollment, we definitely went centralized. So all schools had to have parents either fill out a registration electronically or paper pencil, which then my wonderful coaches took, put it in a process where we sent it to the enrollment office and it became a centralized enrollment piece, which is something we hadn't done in the last years. High impact tutoring, this is wonderful. We continue to deliver math and literacy tutoring services for grades 3 through 5, but we honed in on middle school and provided math tutoring, in-person tutoring with the help of Philip Hutcherson. But the difference here is that the tutors that went in and provided personalized tutoring to the students also met with the teachers during a plan time to make sure that what teachers were teaching was aligned to what was being tutored. So that component really worked well, and that's a highlight for middle school. We did extend to a 6-week session. Each of those sessions still incorporated the 5.5 instructional hours. And we again went with credit recovery at the high school. And again, middle school, we looked at the tutoring sessions at middle school, but we also incorporated a lot of enrichment through our enrichment partnership, which was also great. And that would end with our enrichment. Okay, so these quadrants is how we broke them down to our 15 sites. So Taylor and Rogers were our host sites. Rogers was the 4-week site. Taylor was the 6-week site. And all the schools within that quadrant could select to go to Rogers for a week, 4-week, or they could go to Taylor for a 6-week. So this was almost like open choice enrollment because parents could go all the way across town if they chose to, if they had transportation to attend any program in any quadrant. When you look at, for example, Mannan North, we had them housed at Palmer, but we had a principal for Palmer and then we had a principal for Mannan North, even though they were housed in the same building. So the same thing you can see for the Northeast area, we had Keller as our 6-week host site, we had Carver as our 4. For the Southeast, we had Grant as our 6-week host site, we had Henry as our 4. At West, we had Jackson for our 6-week host site and Bristol at our 4. And then we had our opportunity schools who also joined this year with Digital, Spark Online, and Tesla Alternative.
Since you're on the slide,
Sure.
all the middle and high schools, were they 4 weeks or 6 weeks?
4 weeks.
So the 6-week was only at the elementary school?
Correct. Any question? Do you want me to stop and
No.
you can stop me and ask questions. So we put 23 to 24 in comparison of our enrolled students. So you will see that we had a 66% increase this year. So we had 1,345 more students participating. I will tell you that part of this is due to the recruitment efforts all schools gave in this process. So I think last year we had recruitment efforts, but it wasn't as well designed as it was this year to deliver that message that it takes all schools to recruit students and invite for Summer Bridge. And I think part of those efforts is reflected in what you see here in the number enrolled of students. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. Could you provide a little bit more clarity on that first session, second session, third session? What exactly does that mean?
Sure. So for high school students, depending on the credit recovery that they need, they can enroll in a first session, which is usually 2 weeks long. They can take those classes for credit recovery, but then they can come back for second session if they need another subject credit recovery. So a student can basically obtain 3 credits in 4-week sessions. So one student can basically get up to 3. So that's kind of what it looks like at traditional high school. Got it?
Before you go on, was there
Sure.
a difference in the recruitment from 23 to 24 in the process of that? What
For
was
high
that?
school? particularly?
Yeah, and the reason I ask, I taught in Summer Bridge for 3 years. And I'm just curious because I knew that it was hard to get kids to sign up.
Yeah.
So that there's a 66% increase, that's huge.
Yeah, so what we saw was we had a lot of parents who registered for students to enroll, and then we did see some drop off, right? So they filled out the paperwork and then at last minute decided not to register. At the high school, I think they were very purposeful at selecting those kids who needed credit recovery. Now you're right, in terms of we can invite and we can give you the form, either paper or we can do it electronically, but to get you to want to do it or actually fill it out and then come is a different story. But we did much better on our recruitment efforts. My team and I designed a system where principals and whoever their recruitment team was from that building had to make at least 3 attempts for each family, not just one. They had to make 3 and document it in a system to tell us we made 3 attempts. If we still got no or we got no responses, it wasn't because we didn't make the effort to do that.
I think to note here is the direct invites this year were much more specific by the school, but by we believe your child would benefit from this experience. And so I think what you'll see here that I want to comment on is elementary it certainly went up. I think that's because the messaging was a little clearer. Middle school, although it went up, the number of invites that we spent compared to the number of people that showed up, that was our largest gap. There's a giant gap for us in us saying your child could benefit from some high leverage standard work over the summer, and right now there is no grading or promotion standard at middle school. So you can literally fail and move up a grade. And so I think from a parent's perspective, there isn't that same connection than in high school, which is the only way you're going to meet your graduation goal is if you earn the credit. And so when you have failed a subject, it's an exchange of you got to go to summer school to get the credit. Now, so the good news is we had lots of high school students attend to regain those credits. But if you add those numbers up, particularly what's the student population of Darren Smith, what's the student population roughly for Coronado High School?
1250.
Okay, we're talking on average, our high schools hold about 1,250 kids. When you average them all out a piece, so we graduate around 1,200 to 1,300 a year. If you have thousands of students getting credit recovery, 1,500, it literally says 1 out of every 4 high school students failed a class last year. Now, I don't know about your high school experience, but mine was that this collection of students at a table, maybe one of the students is failing and is identified very early for us to get interventions and extra instruction, you'll like that, Dr. Carey, to ensure that students aren't in a credit recovery position. And remember, although credit recovery meets the state requirement to earn the credit, it is not the same rigor of the entirety of passing Ms. Hafley's class. I know what rigor happened in Ms. Hafley's class as compared to the 2 weeks credit recovery. There's 75%-ish of the standard, and so you're good to go. This deserves our attention on how is it that 1 out of every 4 children. Now, it might not be that, because there might be some kids that are in there as duplicates, right? Because they have to take several, but that's way too high of a number. If 1,200 kids are in each grade level, and we're doing somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 credit recoveries, mind you, that's after everything that John Bailey does for us all year long at Digital Achieve, which is in essence credit recovery in an opportunity academy. We have got to uncover how do we identify students off track earlier and then find interventions for them in the school that gets them back into the learning environment. Anecdotally, the dozen kids I talked to over Summer Bridge, it was, I didn't try hard enough, I didn't show up, I was sick for a week, and kids were done with a class in January or February, obligated to, I'm gonna go to summer school. We have to be better than that. We can't have this be the solution to graduation. It ought to be, even on a bell distribution, normal bell distribution, Z-2 is an F. So on a normal distribution, that can't be a quarter of your kids. That's not a normal distribution.
And ideally, as we progress and move forward and we see even greater increases in year 3 as an overall district, we will change the scope of what we offer for extended school year and summer programming for high school students, because we will see less of a need for credit recovery and more of a need to fulfill our vision of expose, explore, and experience.
So this is our attendance percentages. And what the last slide that I showed you where we broke the schools into quadrants, you don't see them here because we had Greg X take each individual school and extract those kids that attended Summer Bridge. And so I'll let you ask questions to this slide because I'm sure you're gonna have a couple questions with some of these percentages.
Overall, it's the tagline here is we had overall a high percentage. Do you want to add something to the data here, David?
No, obviously the Swigert and Palmer jump out for the wrong reasons.
And those are the 2 schools that could potentially be in the priority improvement category.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking to us that those students need this summer bridge program to close the gaps, and they're not participating.
Is there a rule that if you miss like 3 days, you're out of the program?
So for high school, yes. Came together with the high school principals, and because it's credit recovery and you need to be there
Right.
the 20 days to earn that credit, right? If you missed the second day, you were dropped from the program because we wanted to put those strict parameters. You have to be here to earn the credit that you didn't earn during the year or the semester. So yes, I agree. I do believe Swigert and Palmer did invite and kept calling parents. It's just, again, how do we get them to understand the need to attend summer school?
Carry on.
Was there feedback on the timing at which the programs were offered?
Mean in terms of the 4-week to the 6-week program?
In terms of, it starts on this date and goes to this date.
For these particular 2 schools, it didn't change. It still started at the beginning of June and ended in June for a
I'm
4-week
saying
program.
feedback from parents or from the students saying, right after school I was gonna go, or
We had a few that said,
just a few? Okay.
yeah, we had a few parents that said we already had vacation plans. We didn't deny them the opportunity to come to summer school anyway. So we didn't say, well, if you're gonna be gone a week, then it does no good. We took everybody and anybody depending on what days you could potentially be there. It was just high school that we were a little more stringent because it's credit recovery.
Right.
But for everybody else, we worked with parents and their schedules to basically say, keep your vacation. We're still reiterating the importance of coming to summer school, but we're still gonna honor the fact that you have plans, but get your kids here as many days as you possibly can.
We have thought about shifting towards the beginning of the year instead of the end of the year. We're gonna let the design process decide whether or not that is a cultural norm that our community is ready for. Right now, the 4-week program fits extremely convenient into the July 4th holiday, which is, we're, kind of done at July 4th. The 6-week program, those kids came back. I don't know if in a place where people haven't quite understood the value of extended learning, if coming back early is gonna generate more interest. We're gonna explore that, but sometimes it's easier to finish what you started than to restart what you haven't finished.
Gotcha.
I don't know, we'll see about that.
Back to you, Brenda.
Okay. Alrighty, so you will see the difference in staffing in terms of administrators and teaching staff. And so you will see that we went from 24 building principals to 19. We went from 312 certified staff to 218, and on 2024 you will see we included also mental health and LTEs. We separated it from 2023. Paraprofessionals are definitely a lot less than 2023. I'll speak to the teacher and residents in just a little bit. This was also purposeful. What I noticed in 2023 is that we were heavily overstaffed. And so Dr. Gall also, or Mr. Gall also noticed this as well, is that we sometimes had a ratio of 5 students to 1 teacher in 2023. This year, the stipulation was you had to have at least 12 students to 1 teacher. So what we told principals was you needed to make sure you had 12 students to 1 teacher before you could hire another staff member to make sure we met that ratio. So we did a much more diligent process of hiring staff.
It's
Can you
also
remind me
in
what the LTE acronym stands for?
Technology.
Library technology.
Educate.
It's an MLO authorized position. It's a kind of a combination of the librarian and how we introduce our kids to technology.
Yeah.
I think the staffing decrease also is it was a very intentional work to have consolidation of sites.
Correct.
So it was about being mindful of ratio, but it was also the consolidation of sites. One thing to note here, and thank you, Director Ott, for your questions related to the data that was presented here. What's updated on board docs is not the same numbers. We had to adjust the slide, and after this presentation today, we'll make that
re-upload
adjustment.
this brief.
Yeah.
We were outside of the 24 hours. The other thing the team's not taking credit for is there are some sub-strands that happened within here. We used some more senior principals as principal coaches in the space. That was very helpful, particularly for our combined locations. And we also started a teacher residency program where we had teachers that were in their first year get a co-teaching kind of an on-the-job training opportunity in Summer Bridge, having visited 4 of those different classrooms. Very well received and really helped informing a lot of the work that we're doing this year on a redesigned new teacher orientation and how it is that we give our newest educators the supports that they know that they're gonna need in that first year, either in District 11 if they lack overall experience or just in that first year of teaching. So it was a lot of fun to go into classrooms and see Summer Bridge be kind of a safe space for a new teacher to be able to learn their craft instead of August 12th is the day. Welcome, best of luck, Director Jurgensen, as you must remember your first day of teaching.
Here's your fire hose.
There we go.
Right.
Yep, and so we expect to double that. This year we were limited, you can see the number there, the 5. We were limited by some of the hiring. When do we get a contract? When's that contract in place? And so now for this next summer, as we develop Summer Bridge, the goal is if you're in the local area and you're already hired, we want you there. Because again, to pay a new employee a week or two's temporary work salary to get that really jumpstart for them is so worth the investment as compared to the first day of school being your first day with students.
And I think it's also just important to note with the principals that we had run successful sites, but also to evaluate and lead and observe the other centers, so our lead principals for that work. They were principals that had great results previously and currently, so they were doing both. They were leading sites so they could get great results with the kids in their sites, and they were evaluating and supporting other and coaching other sites to do well in the same way.
And I will go into more depth in a couple of slides about those 2 programs because it was just phenomenal to see the work that was done.
Carry on.
Dr. Colicky, or you want?
Alright, so we'll take a look at data in 2 different flavors, if you will. The first set is more of a criterion reference set of data. So what we're looking at here is the number of students on the pre and post test that Chief Acevedo mentioned related to specific skills, reducing a fraction, thinking about base 10, what's a decimal, right? So it's very skill-based, and you can see that we had great growth across all the grades within that. We used Eureka as the tool, and these were teacher-designed assessments that were then graded. So these are related to specific skill acquisition. that students picked up, and you can see that we had a good track record, a good pace of skill acquisition pre to post across all our grades. And this is within the 4-week elementary program, and the 6-week had very similar trends. So within skill-based, we want to also then ask, how does this relate then to like kind of moving up into grade level? And so when we look at 3rd and 5th grade, I highlighted these because these are really critical transition years, moving into more harder math in both of those for the next year. 3rd grade, we had about 18% scoring into the proficient and above, and that grew by 18%. And in 5th grade, it grew by 24%. So again, just to underscore this very skill-based focus on acquiring these abilities, Summer Bridge appears to be pretty effective and a good tool to be able to do that among our 2 through 5 math students.
Dr. Colicky, can you go back to the 4-week slide for me? Because I want to highlight something. One more. So if you'll notice Rogers, because I wanted to see the increase in percentage growth. And Rogers had some extremely high numbers in percentage growth across the band of grade levels. But then I asked Julie to help me do something today. We went and we looked at how many teachers that were at Rogers, which was a combination of Rogers teachers and Queen Palmer teachers. How many of those teachers actually sat in on the committee to design these paper pencil assessments? And 7 out of 12 of her teachers actually were a part of that design. So this speaks to some of the teachers not buying in, but they're actually taking ownership for developing those assessments, identifying those high leverage standards, and then making sure that the instruction is aligned. And so you'll see that Rogers was pretty much out of all of those schools. Henry has a couple of high spots as well, but we see a difference when we're having that professional development opportunities of teachers coming together to actually dig into the curricula. Back at you.
Great. You will notice that this work stopped at 5th grade. This would be a very, very rich, target-rich environment for our middle school teachers to do. Because again, that 5th to 6th grade transition, but in particular that 8th to 9th grade transition in math is absolutely critical. So to have this focus on specific skills, I would propose is an excellent use of this time, both in the 4 and the 6 weeks. So now the next question then is, how does this translate to a more of a norm reference test? This would be our STAR test, so taking students that were in Summer Bridge and then looking at how does this compare to a broader population at this particular time of year for this particular grade. And so you can see the comparison of 23 to 24. The big takeaways here for this year, and we'll see this over and over in the next few slides, is that this year's Summer Bridge was particularly effective in moving students up into meets and exceeds. So remember, this is other language for functioning at grade level. You can see that in the skill-based, and now you see that same thing popping up in STAR. So you can see it overall compared to last year on similar to below, but that meets and exceeds grew 3% compared to 0% in 2023. 18% on STAR improved at least one performance level, which is encouraging. So we moved in ELA students up into meets at a greater rate than we have in the past. In maths, very similar trend, grew 3% again, and relatively flat or underperformed on that bottom, so did not yet meet. You can see, remember last year we had a big conversation around that 8 close to 9% to celebrate. I still want to celebrate 5%. That's still a big number, but we really, the sweet spot for us this year was in that meets exceeds. Getting kids to grade level is where we hit it well. Yeah.
This would not be data that you have yet, but I have a thought. Superintendent Gall started this presentation talking about how getting families on board with this was challenging due to an insufficient value proposition is what he called it. So this is all data for how students grew at the start of Summer Bridge to the end of Summer Bridge, right? But the underlying goal here is that you're giving students the competencies to address learning loss over the summer and to try to get them caught back up on track. So in previous years, have we ever tracked how students in Summer Bridge go over the course of the academic year compared to students who were offered Summer Bridge but did not choose to take it?
Yes. Yes, you
Not
can
quite in that
not-
totality.
yeah,
What
not-
we did measure was a lack of summer loss by end of year to beginning of year. We just don't have BOY data yet, so we can report that back. But what we noticed last year, because our update to the board was later last year, was that we saw significant lack of loss, which isn't quite improvement, but it's better than going backwards, which most systems see, that your end of year data and your beginning of year data, there is some statistically significant loss that happens for children. Now, we are in the space now where Ed Insights is able to track cohorts over time. What we decided this year was, instead of making the measurement years out, how do we create, if, I don't want you to go backwards, but to the Eureka slide, make it about the high leverage standard, because our if-then statement was, if you can master base 10, which is which year in math? 5th grade, maybe, 4th? If you can master base 10, you'll be more successful in 5th grade math after you get over the 4th grade standard. So we went for the high leverage standard to be able to see, and we certainly saw great results. What we don't have is the corollary to, are they sustainable, and do they then impact that if-then statement of, if you master a high leverage standard in 4th grade, are you more likely to succeed in 5th grade? Anecdotally, we think the answer will be yes.
Because I think that would be a useful point to be able to make to parents if you're trying to get them on board with the program. Not only will Summer Bridge, get you up to speed on X, Y, and Z topics, but then our data shows that when you go into the next academic year, because you've spent this time catching up, you
We
are
agree.
much better positioned than, your comrades in arms who did not do Summer Bridge. So I think that would be a useful comparison.
We agree, and we will do that work.
Yep. That is, we close out fall star in about, next Friday, so.
But last year's data, would it be fair to say that that's what it showed? That the beginning of the year data, the testing data for the students that took Summer Bridge, those students scored higher than the students that didn't take the Summer Bridge.
They scored about, we didn't, among that group, we didn't have the typical learning loss over the summer.
Yeah.
So it was a
Were they-
slightly positive slope over into the fall.
Yeah, it is pretty for the amount of time of instruction, and it's particularly with last year's results, because we had only 4 weeks, and this was the first year that we offered 6 weeks as well. But we didn't see loss, and we saw some gain. So that is not typical over the summer. And that did allow us to have a different starting point at the beginning of the year. So I think that's a great way we can think about making the case to. It's a compelling case for parents. I agree with that. I just want to highlight, when we were talking about the recruitment and the enrollment efforts, Jessica Wise and her team, it was the effort was very intentional from the district and her work to the school and multiple lists, recruitment wise too. So I'm sure that's something she'll want to add as well. But she did a phenomenal job.
So thank you, Dr. Wise. And I was going to mention, I promise.
Let's keep this going. I just want to keep us on the agenda as best as possible for the rest of the evening.
Just give a lie.
Lots of information here that you can review. Again, the takeaway was at 3rd and 5th grade, this was a great treatment to getting students to meet succeeds. At 8th grade, it was a great treatment at 15.5 far below, so it follows that same trend as last year. So again, critical transition grades, but I think that elementary, if we really look at getting students up to grade level and above, this is a powerful tool. Our minority students compared slightly outperformed 2023, again in that far below grade level. This is in reading, so ELA, and again, same trend. 3rd and 5th grade, It was powerful. It was a powerful tool for leverage to get students up to meet succeeds. At 8th grade, it was a powerful tool to get kids out of well below. Minority, again, is commensurate with 2023 related to approaching grade level and far below. When we look at high school recovery, I think this just really does align with what Superintendent Gall was talking about. We need to really analyze through our design lab thinking, what is the purpose and what is the messaging that our high school credit recovery program that we need to convey and that we want to convey. Earning these credits is to be applauded. The work that goes into it is huge. But again, we can't say that a credit recovery experience in 4 to 6 weeks is commensurate to a full class experience that a student would have. And really helping identify those gaps early is absolutely the takeaway here. So that overall, close to 2,000 credits, about 500 more earned than in 2023. And then just our traditional high schools, you can see there total credit numbers.
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
there? So did we as a district not invite the other schools last year?
Yeah,
The-
They
the-
were,
Yeah, I think
So they're
They
just
were.
buried into the other school numbers?
correct.
Okay.
Because we had some kids that would go from Mitchell to attend digital or to Connexus classes. So we did a much better job this year also of tracking that credit recovery according to where these students actually attended.
Okay.
Much better.
All right, so that explains why there's essentially lower numbers in theory at the other main schools.
Correct.
Okay, thank
We're
you.
doing much better. We're getting there. Okay.
So again, I'll hand it over,
Yep.
but some of the lowest hanging fruit here is to get our middle school teachers and teams engaged in that performance task and real skill-based focus that we saw success with elementary.
I was hoping it was a slice instead of the memo. So I'll move on to the mini teacher and residency program. This was phenomenal because the way I started this program with the mentors and the mentees was we actually went in with a focus, and the focus for the 4 weeks was actually student engagement. We even delved into what kind of student engagement activities would be tracked. So we set goals around those identified engagement strategies, and they purposefully went through tracking. So if we set our goal at 90% of our students will be proficient in an engagement strategy of productive struggle, and both the mentor and the mentee tracked it, then we came back and we discussed, so that 100% goal that you set, was it 50% students that met that goal? And if it wasn't 100%, why? Actually diagnose why these students were not engaged. So at the end of this program, which we're gonna use for the design thinking team, that group of mentors and mentees put together a workbook that they would like to see implemented with brand new teachers on the trajectory of how do we get them to lessen the drinking from the fire hose, especially if they're brand new babies entering a year. This was highly productive. I'd also like to, I spoke with Katie, help me with her last name, Weisberg.
This is from the design thinking lab.
Yes,
Yeah.
spoke with her today on how could we pull in these mentor and mentees at some point to talk about the benefits of what they saw as we implemented this during summer bridge.
Yeah, but it's really important to remember, like, it was nice to have that support. But this was part of the vision that we couldn't actually enact when we were making initial changes right away to Summer Bridge, and this is the realization. So having a residency program was always part of the work, and having the time and the space to be able to work on it. And now that we'll align more with our HR team and our department there with getting our newer teachers in sooner, coming up with ways to either get them on contract or think outside the box on how we're able to have them come on before they're truly on. That's the vision moving forward.
Any questions on the residency program?
Let's keep moving.
So this is the part where we utilized our principal mentors. And so each of us, which you will see, consisted of 2 high school facilitators, 1 middle school, 2 elementary coaching principals, Christina Butcher and Stacy Brisman, and then of course my team. We split up and took buildings and did learning walks in all buildings. 197 learning walks were conducted. What we did was we left those observation tools with the actual Summer Bridge principal to kind of give them an idea of what we were seeing, especially in terms of the core actions, because we used the learning tool adopted by Achieve the Core to really look at those 2 bullets in walkthroughs. We did not want to make these learning walks evaluative, so we left the forms with the Summer Bridge principals. But hopefully this is also a key component moving forward, that we can actually look at how do we change the instructional design to include more student engagement and productive struggle. Because you'll see on our findings, some of the glows that I took some glows that our Learning Walk team noticed. We did see more engagement in students, not as much as we would have liked to, but definitely more than 2023. But we definitely see that the need for our students to engage more in productive struggle than our teachers. We definitely noted that when we came back as a team to discuss what are you seeing. Also noted at 9th through 12th grade classrooms, more of that tier 1 instruction and differentiation. Good stuff coming from that. You'll see some of our kiddos participated. Good stuff. And then again, this is the design lab coming. Our first meeting, I believe,
Is,
next week. Next week.
And this is really just because
Yeah.
there's a value proposition question, which needs to include our engagement office and members of our DAC to understand how it is that we can communicate to the parents the value in extended learning. And then secondly, resources are limited. So we don't have the freedom of what we had with ESSER. This will be the 3rd summer bridge that will come next year during my time in District 11. And when I think about how loose it was the first year, and I think we were off, way from what had been projected to what realized, it's getting tighter, but it needs to get to a space where it is sustainable, it is succinct, and it is intentional.
Jumpstart didn't change for the purpose of Rising Kindergarten, Rising 6th or 9th, so I'm going to quickly skip that over to tell you that the design that we did for kindergarten this year, we created a screener for kindergarten with a committee comprised of kindergarten teachers. It was a quick screener that lasted maybe no more than 15-20 minutes. On August 12th, we had a schedule of kids coming in to get screened. The purpose for that mostly was to look at if we have kids especially attending our preschool program here in D11, and if they're coming in not reflecting that they have pre-readiness skills, how then can I use this information to meet with Sarah Carlson later on to see, is there a disconnect between our preschool programs and our district or any preschool program to how students are coming in with those pre-readiness skills ready for kindergarten. So this was designed purposefully. It also gave teachers on the next day, which was August 13th, to review and analyze those skills to see how many kids came in proficient and ready. And then August 14th to actually start, and gave teachers also potential to place kids in classrooms based on the data and based on behavior anecdotal notes. So that was very intentional, and we got a lot of positive feedback about how we designed this year.
But it's also too, like, it's not necessarily like there's some work done with assessments, but it's the major change, and like what's very helpful to teachers, especially at the kindergarten level, when you're bringing in new students to full day programs, you're doing assessment. So our kinder teachers are doing assessments with students in the classroom, and at the kinder level, it's one-on-one. It's not, a lot of other districts and schools, we were able to bring this here in D11 do that. And so this was nice. We did get a lot of good feedback for it, but really it's a practice that all kindergarten classrooms do, and you have to use that data to best instruct students, and this was a great way to do that.
And it was a unified screener, so all of our elementaries utilized the same screener. It wasn't design it how you want, everybody used the same screener.
Thank you for that feedback. Board,
Absolutely.
So, as they mentioned, a design team is going to be put together of district stakeholders that will look at the value proposition that Superintendent Gall talked about and bring some recommendations to the board in early January, probably around that time, as to what the 25 Summer Bridge will look like, some recommendations going forth. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, concerns about what was presented today, takeaways, now's the time. Okay, it looks like the board is good with it. I will provide one overall feedback that I saw in that data out there. Middle school is a concern to me. Elementary school, there are a lot of parents that still want their kids to learn during the summer, and also, in a way, if they are working and they have a job, they want their kids, elementary school kids, they want somebody to watch over their kids. So we get their kids. High school, again, if they need credits to graduate, they engage them. The middle school gap out there, kids want to stay at home during the summer. They do not want to come to school. Parents trust their kids at that age to stay at home in the summer, and there is no credit recovery or any accountability attached with it out there. That's why you see the limited participation out there. So that's a serious concern. How do we engage these kids when Superintendent Gall is talking about 6th and 7th grade kids getting all Fs, but still moving from one grade level to another grade level, and they are consistently falling behind, and then by the time they come to high school, they are so far behind that high school teachers find it difficult to catch them up, and that results in dropouts, all associated problems related to graduation. So we got to do something at the middle school level, and this is something that I'm throwing out to the entire board. We took a heavy lift last year in addressing ABC policy, attendance, behavior, and cell phone. Maybe it's a priority that we can discuss at the next board retreat. How do we get middle school kids engaged, and what accountability measures that we can use to get them back into the classroom and hold them accountable so we don't have all these kids getting Fs and moving on from grade level to grade level. And ask the superintendent, charge him to come up with a plan how we can best address middle schools. That's my feedback to you, Superintendent Gall. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I'm super proud of the team of getting tighter. We still have work to do. Pleased to the community. Every extra minute we can get with your child is an opportunity for them to exceed their potential.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for all the hard work that you guys did over the summer. I was in a couple of schools just for some of the activities. The kids were having fun. Elementary school kids shooting rockets and
Right.
that was awesome.
Yeah,
to see.
so thank you for having confidence in myself and my team. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the contracted student transportation services. So Chief Odom, if you can join us at the table, and also we have some people from the transportation department that are going to join us at 2. Please
Come on up.
So just to again provide some context, over the past couple of years, because of the acute nationwide bus driver shortage, and that's not specific for District 11 alone, the district has used a portfolio approach to fulfill our student transportation obligations. To continue that portfolio transportation strategy, the board will consider several sedan services contracts at the September board meeting. Today, we are receiving an update on the current transportation services offered by the district, the range of services we provide for our students, along with several numbers and statistics for the board to digest. And to support this portfolio transportation approach, an RFP was also put out to find highly qualified, experienced vendors with strong safety records in helping us fill that gap. and ensure our students are being picked up and dropped off on time. We will receive all the necessary information today pertaining to the RFP process as well. And so to the board, today we are getting that information. The ask from you is that these contracts will come up at the early September meeting for board approval. With that, Superintendent Gall, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, hello again. Good to see you all. Thank you, Chief Odeman, for the transportation team being here, CJ, Kevin, and I know we have some other folks behind us as well that I think Chris will introduce. We're gonna go over briefly why we have a portfolio strategy, but this is information to go from what had been emergency authorization for contracts to now a more transparent and formal way in which we let contracts. We're not really shifting much at all, just that way in which we have procured, which happens to be now 2 and +1 companies to be able to deliver on our portfolio strategy. We know that there are lots of people who wish that we could still just transport the way that we used to. It is not District 11. Nationwide, there are less people who seek to use bus driving as a way to make their living. And so we have been forced into a portfolio strategy, of which there are actually some benefits for, but it does come at some costs, and I will transfer to Chief Odom.
Well, thank you, Superintendent Gall. Good evening. I am happy to be here, and it's nice to know that we have been able to get kids delivered to school on time. So as with us tonight from Transportation is CJ McCampbell and Kevin McCafferty and Rosa Garcia from Procurement along with Chantel Bridges. Chantel is the contracting officer that worked through this solicitation. As President Malpacum indicated, we will be bringing to you 3 contracts on September 3rd, one for each of the 3 companies. They all have the same scope and they all have different initial budget amounts. I'm going to ask if you would hold your questions till the end, if that's okay. The main objective for these 3 contracts and for our transportation department is that we want to be able to right size our portfolio. This includes routes, this includes schedules, and vehicles. Tonight we will go over some of our staffing evolution and our route support. We will highlight last school year statistics and outcomes and some strategies for this school year. And we will close and wrap up with RFP highlights and how we're going to diversify the work assignments in each of the 3 contracts. I know the slide looks a little busy, but just to give you some context, pre-COVID, we were meeting our student transportation needs with 106 drivers based on about a 4,800 student ridership and supported over 2,400 field trips. Post-COVID, we could hardly get enough drivers to get our students to school, which is why we had to invoke a sedan service portfolio model. One of the most beneficial outcomes is that we were able to get students delivered to school on time. We went from an 85% on-time delivery rate to 100% delivery rate, which is the greatest benefit for our sedan service portfolio model. Last year, we were able to start the school year with an attractive bus driver wage using a budget-neutral solution where we reinvested vacant positions into salaries and reduced the overall budget. Today, we have 75 driver positions and 13 vacancies. Coincidentally, our routes in comparison have maintained about the same. We are at about 57 routes. That includes general ed and special ed student transportation. These are just some highlights of last year's end of year notable accomplishments or just statistics. I want to highlight though that we are right sizing our routes and that we also support, in addition to the 57 AM PM routes, 14 midday routes for student programming. That's gifted and magnet program, that's dual language immersion program, and the others that are listed on the slide right here. While we remain flexible to adjust stops within our routes, the fluidity of scheduling is more of an art than a science. We also have to right-size our student transportation fleet by having various sizes of student transportation vehicles that coincide with the size of the route, which includes right-sizing our contracted student transportation services. Last year, as you recall, in January, we came to the board in need of a mid-year fund balance adjustment, as we were projecting to be out of money and running about 1.8 million to get to the end of the school year. And I promised at that meeting that we would right-size our needs and get it well within budget for this school year. For this year, we reduced our budget by $500,000, and immediately last semester we started making small adjustments to reduce some of those small outsourced routes which had less than 10 students and place them in various existing routes. Our end of year spend was $1,541,513. What I really would like for you to soak in on this slide is that the greatest populations we serve with our sedan service are McKinney-Vento, which is our homeless population, and our special ed rides that are unable to be supported within our existing route structure. And that the volume and that the quantity of each of those are unknown every year. We are basing it on a trend and our historical usage, but both have an upward trajectory, trajectory. Also noteworthy is that for our hop, skip, drive rides last year, 82% of our sedans transported multiple students per ride. This represented workload that we went out and worked very diligently to make sure we were very conscientious of our spending. We have already gone over some of the ways that we right-sized our contracted student transportation for this year. You know, we reviewed and consolidated routes, and we maximized our sedan service, multiple student trips. We are still working on filling every one of our driver vacancy positions, and we continue to right-size our inventory, our fleet inventory. This year, we will retire 15 outdated buses. The life expectancy is over 15 years. That's when they're out of their life usage. Most of these outdated buses are well over the 15-year mark. I do want to point out that when we replace with some of our newer, smaller vehicles, some of those are non-CDL required vehicles. The state CDE has recently, last year, approved a non-CDL chassis school bus. I know that's a lot of language, but they're small yellow buses that look normal, but you don't have to have a CDL license to operate, and that has helped. The more of those that we can purchase, that will help with our model. Now we are at the RFP phase. So with every RFP, you write the requirements differently. Every RFP is unique in how we issue it and how we evaluate it. For this particular requirement, we structured it where we had minimum requirements the vendors had to meet, and then we had what we call desired service outcomes. Some of the more notable ones I have listed on the left side of the screen. And more weight was given, the more you could accommodate some of those desired service outcomes. But during the initial evaluation phase, we evaluated a piece of past performance that includes performance based on experience, qualifications to perform the work, and reference checks were evaluated in the next final phase. The top-ranked companies experienced strong capabilities, nationally recognized, and strong demonstrated safety records, all in addition to some of those highly serviced outcomes. The evaluation committee down-selected 3 firms to invite to the interview phase of this process. Those 3 companies are EverDriven, First Student, and Hop Skip Drive. The interview phase shored up clarifications and included things such as what is included as a minimum trip requirement, lead time for scheduling, since oftentimes it's a very short notice need that comes up that we have to schedule with, vendors' routing and scheduling platform functionality. We wanted to make sure it had a parent inclusion opportunity, and reporting requirements for the district. We also discussed details on what each of these 3 firms offered that we felt very beneficial, and that was a local dedicated representative for on-call support. And finally, we discussed feedback on the anticipated workload assignments we were going to issue for this upcoming initial year. The final evaluation outcomes included conversations on pricing, reference checks, and feedback from the interviews themselves. The team, after this all concluded, strongly desired to have a diversified portfolio option because all 3 firms were able to absorb and bring different strengths to the table. While we have experience working with all 3 vendors, 2 of the vendors would be exploring new requirements. Specifically, Hop Skip Drive was branching out and including opportunities to transport kindergarten and wheelchair accessible special ed students. And while we have experience with First Student, we have never used them in a sedan service model. So we felt the best backup plan was to have more vendor support to absorb any workload that maybe capacity might be an issue. The large unknowns in quantity with regard to homeless McKinney-Vento student populations and SPED also represented an unknown that supports having 3 vendors support this requirement. So the type of contract that these all offer, and I do want to know, I apologize for the typo. I have First Student listed as Student First. That is my apology. That is not the name of the company. The company's name is First Student. This is called an IDIQ contract, an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, which means there's no guaranteed money, there's no guarantee of how much work they're going to get. We give them estimated quantities and assigned workload based on trends and past year workload. For the first year, we anticipate EverDriven to be given approximately half of our McKinney-Vento population, which includes, bless you, our special ed McKinney-Vento and other support as needed. I want to note that all 3 contracts have the same scope of work. It's just how we're trying to carve out and divide the workload as equitably as possible based on capacity of the the company based on district needs and what's best for our student. Hop, Skip, Drive, and Ever Driven will have the same type of work with McKinney-Vento support, and first student will be given those special ed student transports that are going to be aligned to sedan service needs. So when I bring the contract, or when Rosa brings the contract to you on September 4th, the total contract value is based on an estimate. It is not guaranteed money. It's based on 5 years times this estimated amount. That could change. But we're working with the information we have based on what we know. I can tell you that last year we spent $612,000 on sedan service for McKinney-Vento, that we spent a little over $400,000 for special ed, and over $528,000 on those small routes that we've already downsized and right-sized. So that's where we think we're going to realize and be consistent. You'll note that we have a $1.2 million budget, and this collectively doesn't quite add up to $1.2 million. That gives us a little bit of contingency in our budget to assign work where it needs, and we'll know that as the school year progresses. These contracts all have our standard terms and conditions, and yes, all the drivers are background checked to our standard K-12 background requirements. So to wrap this up, the 3 contracts that we will bring to you on September 4th for your approval will deliver the significant desired requirements and more. They were funded within our available budget. Each vendor has the same scope of work, so we can reassign workload within the budget based on vendor performance, vendor capacity to perform the work, and the needs of the district. That concludes my overview. At this time, I turn it back over to President Mel Packham for any questions that the team can answer.
Okay, board, you heard the report. So this is a contract that is going to come in front of the board in early September. The rationale behind bringing this to the work session is to make this presentation to the board, and this gives us an opportunity to provide feedback, ask questions. So when it comes back in a couple of weeks in front of the board at the board dais, we can move things along in a much more effective and efficient manner. So this is an opportunity to ask questions. And bring up questions again 2 weeks from now if you need the time to process all this information. Board, questions? Director Bankus.
So I just have a couple. I'm unclear about the non-CDL buses. They look the same, they run the same. How are they different? The engines are different, and so
They have a different chassis and they have a different passenger capacity. All of them are 14 passenger capacity. But they are yellow, they have the flashing arms for stop. They
have a different chassis and a different load?
Student capacity.
Student capacity.
Passenger capacity.
But more importantly, it doesn't require that
It
license.
doesn't require a CDL license to drive.
And so teachers can even drive it.
And coaches and other folks, so
Nice.
creates a little more flexibility for us to solve.
And then the other question is, how are the outdated buses going to be disposed?
We auction them off, and CJ, what's your plan? Auction?
Yeah,
sell?
once we get them stripped down with everything that's on them, we will sell them off to a person that auctions, that takes the buses and sells them. The last time we had the buses, we were able to sell them, I think, for $6,000 or $8,000 a piece. And so we do get a little bit money for those when we put them out, and then we try and reinvest it with board approval into where we need to go next, be it new camera equipment or things like that as we go forward.
And so I asked the question for our community because there has been in the past not having that sort of opportunity to benefit from their work, from their values. So thank you for putting that plan into practice, and I hope our community realizes that we've got a different plan on what we're gonna do with these buses that are now outdated, so thank you.
Sure.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other feedback? Okay, none at this time, so vote that this will come as an action item at the September 4th board meeting. I think Chief Woodham, you mentioned September 3rd.
I'm sorry.
There won't be anybody here on September 3rd. September 4th. Thank you guys also for being here and all the work that you guys do. Beginning of the school year, scheduling and all those things, making sure all our transportation are running smoothly. Thank you for all the efforts that you guys do behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda this evening is the board communications, the board communications effort and the work that is being done in that area, supported by AdPro. Amy, you can come and join us. And again, providing some context on this work. In the spring of 2024, the board discussed the need for some outside support to help with the board messaging and communications. After a transparent and competitive RFP bidding process, AdPro was selected to provide those services. Vice President Hafley is the principal board contact person for AdPro in these efforts. So before we hear from AdPro and Amy, I'm going to bring Vice President Hafley to see if she can help set up this agenda item by providing some overall context.
Okay.
Vice President Hafley.
So we have been, thank you, President Alpacum. We have been working with AdPro for roughly 6 months so that we have better communication with our staff, parents, and community. And we'll be working with them for the next year or so, and then we'll reevaluate the contract. During this time, they've helped put the board's message out to include newsletters, aesthetically pleasing newsletters, and videos as well, providing that support to the board. So today, Amy is here to give a review of what those efforts have been over the last several months and share their recommendations to the board of how we will benefit with the change to our approach. Because this is a new board, we've come up with new board priorities at a previous retreat. Having refreshed previous board priorities, AdPro has been in contact with the superintendent's team, making sure we're all in alignment and talking with us in drafting these new board priorities. So while we're leaning on the previous set of board priorities that are hanging over there on the wall, we're creating our own as well. And with that, I'll introduce Amy with AdPro.
Hi, I'm Amy Gillentine, sorry.
Just quickly to the board, there is going to be several asks based on the recommendations that's coming from Amy today. As she discusses those recommendations, it's an informal ask from the board as if we have a consensus to head in the recommendations, to adopt the recommendations that Amy is bringing to the table. So with that in mind, Amy, to you.
Bear with me, could be technologically challenged. Here's our update to the board. As Vice President Hafley said, we have been doing this since about March. We jumped right in. I think the contract was signed and there was a board meeting that next week. And town hall meeting and all the things. So you guys have seen me at your formal meetings and at some work sessions too. So here is kind of what we've accomplished. We've sent 7 newsletters since the start of the contract. We've done 4 videos, including a very popular, probably the most popular was the graduation compilation that we did of your speeches. I think that got the most engagement, and the board congratulations videos were second. We provided some talking points for the town hall and for some of the board positions. We've attended school events, highlighting board activities in the community. In addition, we've highlighted student achievement at board meetings through that newsletter. We've worked toward having the board speak with one voice to the community with the goal of setting the board as the policymakers to the district. What we've learned is that we redesigned your newsletter, and that was I think Jessica and I said it was a little traumatic trying to figure out how to get that to people through the current systems. The first one went out through SMORE. All the other ones went out through the loop. And through the loop, we do not have open rates or bounce rates. We can only tell you what how many were sent. That's what we've learned. The second thing that we've learned is we need to focus more on the board's initiatives, future policies, and the work on behalf of teachers and students. And we're working with the department, with Jessica Wise's team, to find the solutions to delivering that newsletter and better engagement to focus on those priorities and policies. So here are our suggestions. We're suggesting within the budget that we have, putting a little more strategy behind the newsletter, focused on the board meetings. Right now, they've been really highly focused on what happens at the board meetings. They're pretty much a direct report out. And what we would like to do is sort of combine that with upcoming changes that you guys are discussing to give people a little more notice. I think I wrote about the cell phone policy twice in the newsletters, and it was still sort of a surprise. So if we kind of get ahead of it and be a little more strategic, as well as where you guys will be and when, so people know if they want to engage with you, where you will be. The district has the Let's Talk option. I would like to use that to answer questions about policies that the board controls. Maybe if we did do two newsletters, one of those would be focused on that, answering those questions. Photos from board activities in the newsletters. We'll do some congratulations to the students, that kind of thing. Video congratulations to send out as well. And rotate it around so everybody gets highlighted and no one board member is featured. We want to deliver your messages of student achievement is your main goal. That can't happen without teachers and teacher engagement and support from the board, and partnering with parents. So to deliver that message, we are suggesting a few new modalities. And this is where we'll need your input. The Let's Talk that directly involves board policies, developing press releases. Right now, our communications is internal to students and teachers. We aren't reaching the community with the newsletter. We need to provide some press releases to get media attention to what the board is doing, upcoming board priorities, and upcoming board policies. To do that, we would need to probably strategize a little bit about who would be talking about what, so and who would be the sort of face of the board. Quarterly, we are also suggesting quarterly, we're calling them downloads with D11, with rotating board members in very specific quadrants of the district, 2 to 3 quarter, at area coffee shops, 2 to 3 of you guys, to allow parents, students, and teachers to interact and learn more about the board. I know each of you have your own individual priorities, and this would be a great time we would highlight those things that you want to work on, so people would know what they were coming to hear about. And that way, and have it be, maybe small, at least at first, but at area coffee shops to have those informal conversations. More town halls, I know we did one. We also talked a little bit about having a robust social media presence, and in the RFP, we recommended that the board piggyback onto the districts. That's not really possible. So we want you guys to have your own. And I know that brings up certain issues as elected members. You cannot delete social media posts, but you can respond. So if somebody has something, a question or misinformation, you can respond, but you can't remove the posts unless they are hate speech or if it's spam or something like that. And this is where I ask for help, for you guys to tell me when you're out in the schools. so we can be there and capture your engagement. We do have a social media team who can help out when I can't be there, but I do need to know ahead of time so I can let them know as well. And let's see, now
Let's,
here's the,
Let's
sorry.
stop right there.
Sure.
Because that seems like a different topic. If we can go back and get some board feedback on what you have,
Sure.
the first part of this message. You heard what they provided as far as feedback goes. The first thing is, if we want to track how many people, the open rate, the bounce rate, things like those, the current loop through
Will not.
which we deliver the newsletters, that's not going to be the mechanism out there. And Jessica can jump into Dr. Weiss.
We're aware of that as a district. I'll let Dr. Wise give an update.
We can use SMORE for it, but that means it would not look the way we designed it. We can't do that.
Dr. Weiss.
So the loop has limitations from my perspective for you all in several ways. As Amy noted, it only speaks to our already captured audience. You all are elected officials who represent a broader audience who may not be captured in that. So general taxpayers who don't have students in school, things like that. That's just not a set of email addresses we have, so that's one. Two, the loop itself does not really deliver on any kind of analytics. That's something we're working on as a district, but currently, right now, all it can tell you is message was sent. The SMORE newsletter, which we use, and you'll see one coming from Superintendent Gall and just shortly here, does give you a much better analytics as far as some views and interaction details, but it's limited in its design capabilities. So the quality that Amy has been putting out is not as high on SMORE, but we use it all the time, so that's an option. However, your audience would still be limited. So it's not necessarily about getting to that answer. I think there's a bigger question.
We'll get to the bigger audience question. So the feedback at this point that we need to provide to Amy is, and just to provide the board some context, a year or so back before we got Amy doing our board newsletters, our newsletters were going out through the SMORE's format. So you can go back a year or so back, and that was put together by the communications team, personnel, district personnel at that point in time. And they were able to give us 21,000 people approximately opened this. They cannot tell us how long they spent on it or whether they looked at it in detail. Do we want any analytics? But if we go with analytics, then we go with something like SMORE's, but the design capabilities of that program is little lesser than what Amy is using. Or are we satisfied with the current newsletter, that the format in which it's going out? We won't get any analytics based on that. Jason?
Or option C, there's probably a plethora of these type of services. I use them in my business where you can see clicks within the email, I mean, all of the things. Just RFP
we
it up
do
and
have-
find another vendor.
We do have those available. The bigger issue is that because you're a school district and you have parent and student emails, we can't send that out.
Privacy issues.
For privacy issues. So we have MailChimp that we use for all of our other clients, for alarm dealerships, for instance. But we can't get your email address to send
What
it.
about like Salesforce or other ones that work with private information?
So I think again, it's a privacy issue that the district has the emails and giving them to an outside third party. Can you
For
speak more to that?
parents and students and staff, we couldn't share those distribution lists with AdPro and have them send it out through another platform. So this would then lead into a larger discussion of the district contracting with a different platform than what we currently use, which is not actively within our budget right now. So we are looking to improve just from the district level. We're upgrading. The Loop is an antiquated product from Final Site that Final Site inherited from Blackboard, sorry. It's going to be updating over the next year to a more enhanced final site product, but we don't have a specific timeline on that yet. And I won't know the answers to these questions quite yet because we haven't worked through that with final site.
Just as a follow-up, I personally think we're gonna have to look at this down the road. Everything is going to digital content. We have to be informed. I mean, we're updating our metrics on ABCs this year. We're looking at how we're reporting data and using it. You need to have the tools you need to be able to say, hey, these are kicking back, or nobody's opening these, or so, you know.
It is on Dr. Wise's list to digitize our engagement strategy. That is slightly longer than the deliverable here that
Right.
Amy's asking.
And that's what I meant, for the next, year or two, we need to look at that for your department to go, how do we get you?
But the first time we sent out a snow thing from my email, I mean, I got 1,000 or 1,500 dead delivery bounces back to my own email.
Yeah.
And 1,000 or 1,500, I can't believe you didn't cancel school.
Sure.
So it was equal.
Anyway.
Is there a way to know if they've been delivered to the junk folder as opposed to inbox?
Not through the loop, no. We just know that it wasn't delivered because it wasn't a valid email or cell phone number or something like that.
So there's no chance of it, if it's a valid staff email, that it would go to the junk folder?
It absolutely can. It goes to my junk folder. It goes to my other folder, I will say. So that's maybe unfair. Jessica's brain classifies her other as her junk folder. So it depends. Lots of that depends on someone's open rate. If they're never opening it, then it'll start drifting to their other inbox instead of their focused inbox.
And people would need to make the email where it comes from a safe email. So that doesn't happen. That's an individual preference.
Okay, so it looks like in the long range, the district has a plan to get us that type of analytics. So if the board is okay with it, till that point in time, Amy is comfortable delivering it in the format that she is delivering it in. As long as we know that at least for the next few months, we may not get analytics associated with it. And then when the district moves to a different format, we will get that. Is the board comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you reach those wider audiences with your press releases.
Yeah, press releases, I think it's a no-brainer, we should be doing it. I wouldn't, if the board is comfortable with that, then we agree on
And then
starting that.
you and I meet once every other month to talk about what that looks like.
Okay, the press release is good. The suggestion about 2 or 3 board members, 3 makes it a quorum, about 2 board members meeting in specific quadrants at a coffee shop that we advertise to engage with the community there on specific topics. It could be about the cell phone policy, it could be about the Palmer RFP. Is the board comfortable doing that? Okay, great. So the board is comfortable doing that. And then we'll have our yearly town hall meeting as well, one town hall meeting where all board members will be present. And the last one was social media presence. Is the board interested in having its own Facebook page or Instagram page and things that come with it, where people can come and post anything on there, and we can't, because of we are public elected officials, we can't.
You can't delete unless it's really slurs.
I do think the Let's Talk recommendation goes a long way. We get tons of data from the feedback that we get from Let's Talk. And so I don't believe on the board page there is a Let's Talk or a suggestion, you name it whatever you want. Feedback for the board, click here. The thing that's great about it is we get our own open rates, our own response rates, and the algorithm, for lack of a better term within Let's Talk, categorizes that we can then bucket it. That says of the 50 things that we heard this week, 49 of them were about cell phones, and of the 49, 46 were in favor. And so then we're not having to rely on, where Jason went to go grab something to eat, I think, on the board secretary having to say, boy, I spent all weekend answering emails about this, that, or the other thing. We get real data from Let's Talk, and it's trackable and it stays forever, and as does our responses. So it's a nice way, I think, to get what I think you want from social media, which is the chance for people to tell you what they think, and then without it having to necessarily be out there for everybody to read what one person thinks.
So no
I'd
on the,
like to follow up on that and say, let's think about the workload, having been the secretary. Let's think about the workload that a Let's Talk would add to the job already. And is that something that we're willing to reach consensus on that workload? Because it will be a workload if
It's been very manageable for us. We have a couple that go directly to areas of chiefs that clearly own it, but Shauna does nearly everything that, the district doesn't do this right, or I like what somebody said, and it's manageable.
well, I'm just thinking in terms of the normal flow of emails that we get that are so similar in the first place. And so now we've got two modes of communication coming into the board for individual responses. I don't know, do you think that people would go to Let's Talk as opposed to just sending an email to the board? Do you think they would use that instead so that we're not doubling? What do you think, Julie?
Well, I'm gonna note, it says on there right now, Let's Talk, contact us already. So it's
There's
there.
Let's Talk.
Yeah.
There we go.
Don't know how long it's been there, and we received one recently. So, yeah.
the one from Taylor
Yes.
Elementary.
So the big question is, how long has it been there, and is it very visible? That would be my,
And have we directed people to it?
No.
I don't think it's,
Probably
I don't think we've
not.
directed people to that.
probably
And
not.
if we were to encourage people who are interested in writing the board for a response to their particular concern toward Let's Talk, and then Let's Talk can categorize and put together, that would simplify the job of the secretary. I can see how that would work.
If I may, we have been making a shift with Let's Talk this year to make it more visible. So the direction we've been giving lots of our departments who use it is to just have that front and center on their contact us page. Transportation gets the most Let's Talks, and it's because they have actually removed all other emails from their website. So it's the only way you can contact transportation. So it just makes that line much more efficient. Our engagement page, it's got on our contact us, it's just our Let's Talk buttons before you get anything else. And on the district page, we've shifted to Let's Talk up front before you get to the directory. I say that just to say it's kind of about training people, so it would be a process of transition. But as the district is kind of moving that way to try to funnel feedback into a place where we can actually gather data from it and understand the feedback more than just having it get lost in inboxes, which I want to do, it might coalesce with the board's objectives.
And I think that's the strong point as opposed to random emails coming in mixed with other emails and getting lost in the process. Jason, we just came up with a new job opportunity
Well,
for you.
right now, the community members have both ways to contact the board, whether it's going to be Let's Talk or emailing the entire board. Either way, we get that, and down the line, if it's going to be more coming through Let's Talk, so be it. Just so the board is aware, coming up into the board retreat next week, Vice President Hafley and I are talking to Chief Altner and Superintendent Gall about figuring out buckets of responsibilities for each board member. And we will have a more detailed discussion about this at the board retreat. So everybody has a clear area of responsibility, and when presentations are being made to the board at the work session, it comes through that specific board member. an example would be, let's say if it's going to be curriculum. The board has the responsibility for approving curriculum every year. But if we design, the idea behind this is if we allocate 1 or 2 board members, they will be the principal contact person to review curriculum from the district. So when we are looking at new math curriculum, new social studies curriculum, and then RFP goes out with that, those 2 board members, 1 or 2 board members will be primarily involved in that work, dealing with curriculum, and they will bring that feedback to the rest of the board.
It's an interesting one to choose, because when we talk about curriculum, I would defer to you for your math background and you as well. But when it comes to reading and writing, I would like to reserve that for myself. I don't know what you would like to choose.
Right,
But that, so what I'm saying is that if we're gonna take that up at the board retreat, that might be a longer discussion than maybe we thought.
Yeah, so that's why we are trying to have some type of preliminary draft in place before we get to that board retreat. It's not just curriculum, it could be budget, it could
I
be
understand that.
the whole scope of things. And then ensuring that each board member has an area of responsibility that doesn't become all on the vice president or the president or the secretary or the treasurer. We are delegating responsibilities equally among all board members. And each of you will have a stake, and what you bring to the table as far as your prior experience and also your passion will go into figuring that discussion out. I'm just throwing that out there to the board. I'm happy, or Vice President Hafley is happy to engage with you in the next week to find those buckets, even if before we come to the board retreat. Okay, I just want to share that. Did you get what you needed as far as the feedback go? I think it's no on the board social media page at this time.
I think I gathered no. I do want to just clarify 1 newsletter and the press releases and the videos, so, okay.
Yeah.
And
And now let's go to the board priorities.
So we're gonna show you, we're gonna create a replacement for that. And on the webpage, we'll include the graphic, and we'll have drop downs on each of the priorities covering the individual priorities that we captured at the spring work session. And I do wanna note that the photos in this are D11 students and staff. So we have 2, I think there's 1 photo that is different in each of these 2. So this is the first one. With the to prioritize academic achievement and student success through a high expectation, innovate with intentional education choices for each learner, and drive shared responsibilities with parents, staff, and community as partners. Those are the 3 priorities. And as you can see, those are D11 students and faculty there. And then the second one, did I miss it?
I think it was full.
Okay. So this is the graphic that we have right now. Any thoughts on it?
So this will replace the graphic that we have out there.
And I would point out too that that's the city in the background with the mountains.
And I think this came through intentional engagement with Superintendent Gall and his team. Chief Altmer was involved in it, Vice President Hafley, and I had some discussions with Amy about it. That's how this all came about. But this is now up to the board discussion. Go ahead, Director.
What exactly did you have the conversations about and we are now deciding?
The Superintendent Gall in his end of the year report last year shared with the board his vision on what he is going to bring to the district this year, the 3 areas of responsibilities, the priorities. And then we talked about those board priorities that are in place right now, and then trying to ensure student success and also the peak experience with each one of our students and our staff members, and then the parent engagement and family engagement responsibilities. How do we all capture that in a succinct manner with 3 sentences that resonate to our community? That's where Amy kind of leaned in and provided some feedback. Overall, it was like student success, engaging our staff, peak experience for our students, and then family community engagement. And then Amy provided the sentences to resonate with that.
So, and it was, they're very action oriented, they start with an action. To really engage people and to let people know that the board is taking action.
So when I look at our conversation piece over there and compare this, so community engagement, for example, where do you, and communication was a priority, where do you see that in here?
That, I would say that community engagement falls under shared responsibility with parents, staff, and community as partners.
And communication?
I would say communication kind of flows throughout all three of them, but that's where it would be, because you have to communicate each of those. So it's an ongoing, instead of separating it out, it flows between and within all of them.
Are we gonna vote on these like we voted on those?
If that is the intent of the board, yes, we can bring this up at the September 4th board meeting, but this is an opportunity for the board to provide some feedback on this itself. This is kind of the draft that is coming in front of the board. Instead of bringing nothing and we trying to figure this out, it's a draft that is coming in front of the board. And then if there are any specific revisions or suggestions that the board wants to suggest, this would be an opportunity to suggest before it comes at the September. That was my thought process, because we set the precedence of adopting that at the board dais, and we can do the same. And by that time, we can also have the printed larger version of this at the board meeting for the board to sign if necessary.
Well, you probably want agreement on it then, which I'd feel better too if we had our 7th board member here.
We are going to extend this conversation into the board retreat at this point in time,
Thank
but
you. That was my
this
next
is going to
question.
be the first exposure to this at this time. So if the board has any feedback, this is an opportunity for you to present it. We have 6 board members here. I don't know how many board members are going to be present at the board retreat. Maybe we have 1 board member missing at this time. But we have a quorum at this time. Board members can certainly present their feedback at this time. And the extension of this conversation is going to take place at the board retreat, when we are going to revisit all the priorities that we listed at the board retreat in end of May, beginning of June, I think, and then we'll try to bucket them into each one of these buckets, all the things, and see if they align with the major priorities that we chose. Chief Hartmer, did I?
Yeah, so these were arrived by taking all of those priorities that were put on the whiteboard at the last board retreat that were bucketed by category, and then trying to say, do any of those go together in a theme that could just be pulled into a sentence? So I think the next step could be then to deconstruct that again and check through and make sure all those priorities that we identified, I think in the total list, there were like 70 some. And so that would be overwhelming to put on a priority list. And so it was an effort to raise it to a conceptual level where we could have a conceptual understanding and then see if all of those smaller pieces like communication and the pieces you mentioned do fit well underneath the 3 larger buckets.
And you do a much better job of explaining it than I do, so thank you. Yeah, Jason.
So this isn't quite my favorite. I don't know why, it's just not. I love that it's our students, our staff in the pictures. That's a huge piece. I feel like all of our minds are so quick focused, right, to go. I mean, like I just had to now take the time to read those phrases. And I feel like a lot of people are just looking for those one words, like the expose, explore, that kind of type thinking, or the innovate, or the, enrich, or whatever those words are. Might need that with those pictures. And then the other piece I look at is maybe just too much gray, even though it is a picture of the city, which we're in. Just as a reference, the newsletter that you sent tonight, that top 5, the roadmap, like that's cool. Like this is cool. Oh, I like this almost better than that one. No offense to whoever's designing these, but I don't know. I think at the first pass it's not my favorite compared to what we have and what you did in your newsletter tonight, so my personal comments. I apologize to be critical
So
tonight.
your feedback would be to change some of the language in there to make it like align
Maybe
with.
instead of them being staggered, they're, again, this isn't my job. This is, we pay you guys to do this, but like level the pictures, so you take up less gray space, and then you've got maybe your 3 words of, prioritize, innovate, enrich, or community, or whatever you.
Okay.
Not my job.
I like that idea. So if you were just to take those action words and put it in the blank space in the upper left on the first, but I do like the staggered, because my eyes work that way as opposed to going across.
Sure.
So I do like the idea of putting those action words in there, which means you'd have to reposition the third picture so that it would fit. And I also agree, until you said what's in the background is, of course, Colorado Springs, I ignored the background because it is too gray.
Versus this one, you can see, oh, that's downtown, with Cheyenne Mountain behind it. Anyway.
Something.
So just so I know, so I can take this back to our designer, you take the prioritize, innovate, and drive and put those in the corner?
It could be like bigger,
Or bigger?
prioritize, innovate, drive with your picture still, because it's our kiddos and staff, that's great.
And
Green and the
then
red
maybe
to
there
that
is
blue.
too much gray in the background. The other feedback that came was there is too much gray in the background. And it was going back to that newsletter that went out, Jason referred to, where we still have a background of the city, but it's more at the top level and not have too much of that gray in the background. Would that summarize what you had? Okay.
We did try it a different way. We tried it with a map behind it, like an actual map that said Colorado Springs, and that was like really busy.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I get you wanna fade that out so it's not busy.
So yeah, we tried something that's a little more faded out, but I think across the top maybe or the bottom.
Any other feedback?
Are you thinking putting the city in color like it is here?
It's an idea, I mean, I like this, I like the roadway, and people can kind of follow their eyes along that road and go, all right, we got 5 things we're working on here, cool, I'm engaging in 5 things. High quality instruction, focused classrooms, diverse school portfolio, connected communities, excellence. So something where you're catching, prioritize, innovate, drive, however you wanna work it, again, not my job.
What are you looking at? What is that newsletter?
This was one.
It just came out.
It just came out
tonight. It's our welcome back to the
So-
community. It
Oh,
should
the
be in
welcome
your
back.
inbox
Some
as
videos
of
there
5:30.
with Tucker and,
Okay.
yeah.
So
all
this
day.
gives, this is exactly what we were hoping for, so instead of having all this at the retreat, this gives us a couple of opportunities to give feedback to Amy.
Yeah.
She can take it back to her design workshop and have people design something, so this is exactly the type of feedback, so thanks for that feedback. And then Amy, you are capturing those, you can come up with 2 or 3 options to bring to the board at that time, I think, Director Carey.
I don't have any comments on the graphic design because I don't know anything about graphic design, but looking at the sentences, I'm trying to remind myself that these are Board of Education priorities and not just district priorities. So the first sentence seems fine to me. The second sentence, we are trying to be innovative. I don't know that the board is making intentional educational choices for every learner. That's something staff and teachers and principals and administration is doing. I don't know that that quite captures what the Board of Education is trying to do this year. And then for the third sentence, I just don't know what the phrase drive shared responsibilities means. I think to Director Ott's point of, did we lose something talking about communication? Did we lose something? What were the other ones? I wonder if just the verb engage captures kind of more of what Director Ott thinks has been lost there. I guess I'm putting words in your mouth, sorry about that.
Our words are being put in our mouths collectively,
That's
so
fair
we
enough.
do have to take care.
I think there's 2 plays on the word choice. I think it's small c or capital C. And so, the board has certainly asked the superintendent and administration to find pathways, CTE, workforce development, new innovative school opportunities, a diverse portfolio, which is where that idea of being innovative in the space instead of just being singular in the space. Now, to the point of choice within the classroom, that is definitely upon us, but you sit as both the Board of Education to operate schools and then also as an authorizer of now 10 different charter schools that represent 11% or more of our student population. So I do think the word choice, maybe we could think differently about how to express that. But it wasn't written to be inward, it was written to be looking across the diverse needs of our community.
Yeah, and I also understand that, you know, in my own head, I try to think about board responsibilities versus staff responsibilities. I know that the public doesn't necessarily understand or make that distinction, and so I can totally be talked into I'm chasing something down that's not important.
And you know, I'll help communicate what Nicole and AdPro have really tried, and Jess was there as well. We were trying to get to a place where the things that are happening in the district can be related to the thing that's on the wall. So in my 3 now years here, I signed the board priorities, but never once have we really said the following contract is being put forth in effort to deliver on board priority 1, 2, 3, or 4, or red, blue, green, or yellow. It has sat fairly static and non-actionable. And so the task to AdPro was, how do we create something that is action impact oriented towards the outcomes of the district? That we can say, in an effort to really grab community, drive shared responsibility, that says we don't think it's on the district alone to drive student success. We need parents as partners, we need nonprofits as partners, we need for-profits as partners. We need all of the city to want every one of the 23,000 and growing students within District 11 to be successful. It is not just if you choose your child to go to District 11. If you live within Colorado Springs, we all benefit from a shared responsibility for that to happen. So the goal here was, can we make what's been on the wall for 3 years a part of the conversation? Because otherwise it ends up just the thing that's on the wall. Matter of fact, the new, and probably because we were redesigning it, but it doesn't even have new board member signatures. So, and if that means a rework, then maybe the retreat gets more specific on these were the areas that you said you all wanted to be invested in. So now, and most of them were fairly tactical. And so now maybe the question goes back to the retreat that says, not the thing that you need to have happen, the why that you're interested in. What are the whys that the board really wants the district and the administration and the partnerships that we bring to bear to be able to deliver on? And that's what this was an attempt to grab.
Okay. Any other feedback at this point in time? Everybody agrees, I think, with that first priority that is up there, student achievement in some way, shape, or form. What that statement is can be revised, but we need to prioritize academic achievement and student success. The last one about community engagement, parent engagement, that's a priority. Third one, Superintendent Gall talked about educational choices, the pathway programs and CTE programs that we offer. Anything that's missing in this, Amy has got your feedback. She will come up with 2 or 3 options next week for the board to digest, both with the visual formatting and also some of the sentences being slightly modified. She can work with Chief Otmer, Vice President Afley, Superintendent Gall can also. Then we can provide that feedback at the retreat. Any other feedback at this time for Amy on this list?
To Julie's point, did we want to specifically put in communication and not have it assumed?
Just write that down so we can see if you can fit that in any one of that bucket out there.
Or engagement.
Yeah, engagement, communication, something out there. Okay. Is there anything else from you, Amy, at this time? Do you need any other guidance from the board at this point in time?
I don't think so at all.
Okay.
Can
Thank,
I ask a follow-up question real quick? Would you recommend we do more town halls, or do you think that having the deal of a
I
download
think if we
idea-
do the quarterly events, that will fill in that one-on-one that I was trying to create.
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you. Thank you for working with us, and we look forward to this partnership with you too. With that, we have one more item left on the agenda, which is the urban renewal projects. If the board is okay with it, could we take a short 2-5 minute break and then we can start that conversation? Okay, we'll meet here in 5 minutes again. And have to leave. So he said that he will watch the video and catch up on the discussion at a later point in time. So the two agenda items that is left today are the URA Urban Renewal Authority projects that is coming in front of the board, and the Urban Renewal Authority, which is a subset of the city government, is asking the Board of Education to consider the TIF agreement for two URA projects. TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing, Property Tax Increment Financing. These two URA projects will come for formal board approval at the September 4th board meeting. Today is just information and time for board to engage and ask questions. We also have all the concerned external partners along with us today, so they will be able to provide more information on each specific project. Instead of bringing it to the board meeting on September 4th, when I was talking with Superintendent Gall, we had two new board members. And so we thought that it would be more appropriate to bring these at a work session, have a more lengthier, detailed discussion on it. And the questions will get answered today. And if you have any follow-up questions or concerns, they can be addressed in the next couple of weeks before it comes for the formal board approval. Again, as I said, the Urban Renewal Authority is a subset of the city government, oversees urban renewal projects. It's governed by state statutes, and briefly, areas that are blighted, that are deemed with the blighted category, and there are several factors that go into it. Neglected areas or city blocks that when fully developed, will revitalize the surrounding areas and the community. That's what Urban Renewal Authority looks at and brings forth projects which are a partnership between the city, private and public entities to help the redevelopment of the city and attract more jobs, housing, employment. Part of the funding for the development of this blighted area and the infrastructure improvements comes through TIF, which is the tax increment financing. Several TIF projects in Colorado Springs are examples of those. Are the U.S. Olympic Museum, the Air Force Visitor Center that is under construction right now, the Ivy Wild neighborhood that was previously a D11 school, the University Village complex on North Nevada Avenue. Those are all urban renewal projects that need the support of all these various partners without the TIF agreement. But for this TIF agreement, it may not be financially feasible. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Comfort. He is going to provide a brief presentation on the TIF agreement, the financial mechanism that drives this, and then we'll come to Jariah, who's also up here.
Yeah, good evening, board. President Malpacum spoke to most of the first slide, so I won't go over that again. But yeah, to speak primarily to the financing mechanism, a TIF, tax increment financing, basically it's a mechanism for capturing the future tax benefits of a new development in order to pay for the present development. And so that's sales, property taxes, where that goes into funding the project, and then obviously that area is improved, and then there's tax benefit later. So a couple of things I want to remind the board, and this is unique to school districts. Jariah, please correct me where I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
We are the public entity that is 100% backfilled through the School Finance Act for any tax impact that we would have. That's not the same for other public entities, but that is for us. So this is zero risk to our total operating fund. It is dollar for dollar backfill that comes from the School Finance Act, and it is already for a number of our existing TIFs that are happening across the district. I created just a little graphic to kind of help describe what's happening here. So this is, remember, TIFs exist for 25 years. They're 25-year increments. And so this graph assumes we're entering into a TIF in this year, 2024. And what you'll see is at any property right now, there's a baseline assessed value, which assessed value equals revenue for our school district. And so we will continue during the length of the TIF to still collect that baseline assessed value and then the revenue as a result of that. You'll see the area in the blue is when you make improvements in a site, obviously assessed value goes up and therefore taxes increase. And so in this interim between now and 25 years from now, if this is approved through all of its channels, that area in the blue is the funding that the school district would not get that would therefore fund this project. That's the area that the School Finance Act comes back in and backfills, that entire area shaded in blue. At the end of the TIF, we're now in the area shaded in green. The TIF is over, the property value is increased, there's increased tax rates, those now come back to the district. So there is long-term benefit for the school district, and again, any potential negative impact that we would see with improved assessed value in an area, the School Finance Act backfills. So again, there really is no risk to us in this. We don't lose funding at all.
So without any development taking place in these blighted areas, what the school district will get is only that yellow or orange, whatever that color is.
Mustard.
That mustard, great, that bottom portion out there. Without any development, that's what we will get. With the improved development in that area, we get that blue revenue. But we, as a school district, if we adopt the resolution that's coming to the board dais on September 4th, we will defer that amount of tax revenue to the URA, and the URA will use it for public improvement projects around those development areas, and those could, Jariah can talk a little bit more about it. It could be parks, it could be a pavement, parking, all of those things that go with it. And we get backfilled by the state, and those improvements are also could have secondary benefits for the school district. It could bring in more families into that development area if it's going to be housing. We could have more school children coming into our schools, or if the development is going to entice further development of surrounding areas. All of that is going to bring extra revenue with that. Thank you. That graph succinctly captures everything out there. It's often much easier to visualize with a graph out there. You had a question?
Whenever you're done.
Okay, go ahead, if you have a question on that.
So one thing I want to just make sure I'm tracking, and then another thing I want to foot stop. So what do we get backfilled on based on being a public school? We get backfilled on the blue, or we get
backfilled on the blue. So we're going to continue to collect the mustard because that's what we would have collected otherwise. So we don't lose that benefit of what we would be collecting. But because there's improvements, again, they would be generating new taxes there, more revenue. That's the area in the blue that in itself is being, like President Malpacum said, is being deferred to actually help fund the project and incentivize developers. But that's what the SFA comes in and actually backfills. 100% dollar for dollar, whatever we would have received because of the blue, they will backfill until the end of the TIF, and then we go back to collecting all of those taxes as we would in a normal time.
So for a different public entity, this graph, that blue section, for a different public entity, that would be missed revenue, or you could think of it in that way, although the blue happening at all is conditional on development. But for a public school, we just get backfilled that full stop?
We do.
Okay.
You captured it. So for example, the library school, and Jeremiah can talk about that. The library is also a taxing entity. Some of the property taxes go to the library. The library doesn't get the blue part of it. They only get the mustard, okay? But we are held, the school district is held harmless. So
These are
with that,
G11 approved colors, just so everybody knows. They are color palette.
with that, I'm going to introduce Jariah Walker. Jariah is the Executive Director of the Urban Renewal Authority. Jariah, you've got some team members up here too, and we also have Toby Gannett from the first project that the board is going to consider, but I'll first hand it over to you, Jariah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Parv. So like Parv said, Jariah Walker, Executive Director with the Urban Renewal Authority. Boy, Julie sees me, has probably seen me up here the most out of any board member that's still here. Like Parv said, you know, and I think Brandon did a great job of putting this graph up and doing a summary of how it works. The school is backfilled, there is no pain there. And with every other taxing entity, you know, it's a totally different conversation than it is with the school district. And each URA has its own unique benefits, improvements. We've actually tried for a long time trying to figure out a way to say, well, each project needs to have certain things in order for it to be a URA, but frankly, each project is different. And we've got Parth highlighted, you know, a lot of them. There's just a wide range and a wide scope, and all of them have to stand on their own two legs when it comes to, you know, coming in front of the URA board. Both of these projects have been heavily vetted by us. So we've gone through our own internal process. If I brought every urban renewal idea that came to me, I would be in your meetings every single month. So you only get the ones that make it through. The first particular project, of course, is an attainable housing project, which the developer to my 2 seats to my left, Toby Gannett, is going to be presenting on. All of our projects also go through a robust financial analysis. So our consultant, Sarah Dunmeyer with EPS, we hired, luckily they're the consultant for both of these projects. We hired to essentially crunch these numbers and do a financial analysis because we want to know if, but for this tool, this project can't happen. And so we want to be able to look through the developer's financials, what's going into the project, and really make sure that we're getting the improvements we want, we're getting the project that we want, and it's something that we feel like the taxing entities would want as well. So with that being said, of course, I'm here for any questions after Toby's presentation, and then also Andy's, who we'll introduce next later. I also want to point out David Neville is our URA counsel. He's in the audience over here behind my left shoulder. David is really the architect of all of these legal documents, so if there's any questions for him, he is on hand as well. So with that being said, just to keep things moving along, Toby, I'm going to kick it off to you to walk through the project, and then Sarah will follow him, and then we'll answer any questions.
Great, well, thank you guys for having me, and I know how much work you guys are putting in as a board because I've been active in education all my life, and your hours are thankless, and you get all sorts of interesting comments through your time on a school board. This project was originally proposed to the board a few years ago. I'll be honest, it came off the rails because of the Ukraine, Fed increases in interest rates, and huge commodity supply chain issues associated with COVID. So we were able to go ahead with the first phase of the project and are coming back with the second and third phase, which is what I'll be talking about today. A lot of people ask me just a little bit about my background, 25 years of commercial real estate and development. I've retired several years ago and have been working on a national level. I'm a fellow at the Aspen Institute and a National Association Board Leadership Fellow at the National Association of Corporate Directors. But several years ago, the Innovations in Aging Collaborative was one of the first groups to recognize that Colorado Springs was going to have a severe shortage of affordable housing, specifically for seniors. They hired the Quad Innovation Partnership, which is UCCS, Pikes Peak State College, the United States Air Force Academy, and Colorado College to do several studies, semesters of in-depth studies into global best practices in affordable and low-income housing. And really, this project is the result of that work and a great deal of community collaboration, and I'll go into that as we get further along in the project. But really, this is a project that is of the community and for the community. And I'm really excited to say this is leading both the state and also the nation in what we're doing in terms of workforce and low-income housing. I got the comment from CHAFA a few days ago. This is happening in Colorado Springs, so we really are setting some new trends. The project is in the Lowell neighborhood. You'll see Lowell Commons is phase 3 of the project. Bristow Commons is phase 2 of the project. A lot of these names come from my family. This is going to be this is a family project that I'm committed to holding long term. There are 3 phases. The first phase is the small building that is up. It's called Sumner House. That is a low-income housing tax credit project that serves 30% to 60% AMI. That is open and filling up very, very quickly. To give you an idea, the people in those apartments would be someone working 40 hours a week at Walmart, up to your entry-level teachers. We have people, a lot of Fort Carson is moving in there, Peterson Air Force Base, Amazon, but that is not part of the URA, so I want to be specific of that. That gets its tax exemption status through the Colorado Springs Housing Authority. So we have to use different financing tools for different types of rents. What we are talking about today is Bristow House, which is the building on the far south side. That's 185 units of workforce housing. That will serve the 70% to 110% adjusted median income for the county. To give you an idea, the lowest rents there would be your entry-level teachers. The highest rents in that project might be a principal or a couple who are both teachers in your district. Phase 3 is Lowell Commons. It will have exactly the same demographic, so serving between the 70 and 110 AMI. All of these units will average under 90% of the adjusted median income for El Paso County. So someone earning under $90,000 per year for the workforce housing and under about $50,000 a year for the low income. This is one of the first projects in the state to combine low income and workforce housing. What's not known about low-income housing projects is if you have a teacher who's living in one of these and they get a promotion, they get kicked out of the low-income housing tax credit project because they're earning too much. And that does happen. When I look at your pay scales, that will happen. So phase 2 and phase 3 is for people who are living in the district who then are earning a little bit more, but it offers the ability for me to take care of our residents long-term and at any economic income. Ultimately, my goal is to have people graduate out of here into home ownership, but that's a totally different model that I'm not addressing here. In total, this is just under 500 units, just under 400 units for workforce housing, which is the URA section of it. It will be one of the largest and most significant affordable housing projects in the state. We're also integrating, this is my historic stone bridge built in 1897. We're trying to weave in a lot of elements. A lot of affordable housing gets a bad rap for not having a quality of life, but we're trying to weave in history, arts. We're bringing this whole area into the creative district for downtown Colorado Springs with a partner, Concrete Coyote. This is a picture of phase 1, which is open but not part of the URA. This is phase 2, which would be the 185 units of workforce housing. Phase 3, this will be right on the intersection of Nevada and Los Animas Street. This will be the last phase, which will be, once again, 200 units of 70 to 110% AMI serving 90% and below. Part of our community partnerships really came out of the work of the Innovations in Aging and Quad Collaborative. in that they did several semesters of study in global practice, best practices in affordable housing. First one was site location. So this one is downtown, it's near transit, it's near public health facilities, near parks, open space, trails. We're also adjacent to Concrete Coyote, which is a local arts organization who we've been partnering with on a lot of different aspects. We also have several other nonprofit partners that I'll go into in a little bit. It'll be 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and studios. And I'm trying to go through this quickly. This addresses some of those income levels. This pairs very nicely with the School District 11 teacher salary chart. But once again, this is for everyone. We had originally intended to make this a senior housing project, but one of the recommendations of the quad was based on the research at UCCS to make it intergenerational, to reduce age isolationism, and to increase the life of everyone living in the community. So this goes a little bit into the AMIs, and you've all been provided with these slides, and you can study them in more detail. We're going to have a lot of amenities in the community rooms, workout gardens, community kitchen. That addresses the AMI. We're surrounded by parks and the Legacy Loop. This is going to be a very safe community by definition. 100% of our residents will have background checks. One of the semesters of study that the quad did was on universal design. So this will be one of the first intergenerational projects in the state that features 100% universal design. That's good for seniors, who we expect to be a large component of this, but it's also great for people living with disabilities. And we've been working with the Independence Center and pushing the city to promote ADA design. But we're also really trying to have an active downtown experience for our residents. A lot of affordable housing projects are built in faraway and greenfield sites where a resident has to pay gas and car repairs and spend time away from family. We very deliberately, once again, based on the recommendations of the quad, located this in downtown Colorado Springs. If I was a smart developer, I would have sold this land, but I am committed to making low-income and affordable housing. Finally, I also mentioned that this is going to be part of the Downtown Creative Arts District, and we're committed to having art come through this community and connect Concrete Couch with downtown. And then one aspect of this that will be different from most other projects that you see is this is long-term deed restriction. That is part of the financing. It's also part of my belief structure, so that these units will be rent restricted for a very long time. The rents will be set by the Housing and Urban Development, and they will only be increased if HUD increases rental rates, but only at the amount set by HUD. So this is, once again, for the community, by the community, but for a long-term good for this community. This goes into a lot of detail. You have the slides. A couple of the other parts that the quad recommended was really to make it green built. So this is going to be National Green Built Council Silver certified, close to net carbon neutral. That's exciting to me, but it's also exciting, I think, in setting the stage for what can be done throughout the state in terms of close to net carbon neutral developments. We also have that as part of having bike shops, e-charging stations, walkability, and the parks. We're working very diligently with our neighbors, Concrete Coyote, I mentioned earlier, nonprofit arts organization. But we're also working with the City of Colorado Springs to revitalize the west side of Liam Young Park. This is where the Hillside neighborhood meets the Lowell neighborhood, and Shook's Run is really a divider right now, and we really want to make that a combiner of these two neighborhoods. Unfortunately, Shook's Run is a garbage heap right now, so we're going to be working with both neighborhood associations and Richard Scorman's group to fully clean up that area and also preserve the historic stone bridge. Finally, you see a list of our community partners. We had over 15 letters of support from people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle. We have had letters of support from numerous nonprofits that really represent the spectrum in Colorado Springs, and I couldn't fit them all on this slide. But once again, this is for the community in its long-term perpetuity, and having the symbol of the bridge reminds us that not only do we look back to 1897, but we're also looking forward in over a century and what is needed for our community and its long-term good. One final comment is a lot of people think that low-income housing is for homeless people. This is not. It's for working people. It's for people working 40 hours a week or retirees. Workforce housing is not a term that you hear very often, but it's critical in our community. Fort Carson has a critical shortage of base housing allowance qualified military personnel that can't afford to live in Colorado Springs. Just like your school district has a lot of people who can't afford to live in the district. And I think when you don't have people, when we have to push the people that are making our community out of our community to live, I think we lose something. And so my final point is really, I am honored to be part of this project, but it's really the inspiration of many, many nonprofits throughout the community that have led thousands upon thousands of man hours into creating a best practices design that I hope will lead not only the state but the nation in terms of affordable housing.
And then maybe we'll dive right into Sarah's bit, just going over some of the finances, and then we can open it up for questions.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Is that in the same slide?
It
deck?
should be, you should be the next slide up, Sarah.
If I can figure it out, you got it.
Easy.
Oh.
Yeah, go to the next one down.
One more down.
She may have to do that.
What do we need?
We're ready for,
Yeah, right, that one.
While she's looking for that, it's Silver Key has also
One
been an
that's
instrumental
The
partner
one that is
throughout this
highlighted.
project and is an important partner.
no, next one, sorry.
The one on the top, I guess. No, the one right.
That's it,
Oh, yep,
that's it.
perfect.
Good job.
All right, so we're just gonna dive into this. Toby did a great job describing the project and everything. So again, this is a site location, and this red boundary would actually be the URA boundary for this project. So it's just under 6 acres, including adjacent right-of-way. And all the parcels are currently vacant with no buildings. So the current property base is pretty low. Here's the vision for the project that Toby already described really well, but essentially that first phase for the URA development is going to be about 185 units, and the second phase about 200 units. As he mentioned, it's all affordable housing restricted to between 70% and 110% of AMI. And there's going to be additional improvements with sidewalks, streetscape, landscaping, public park, and restoring that historic bridge that Toby already mentioned. This touches on the plan objectives of the URA plan for the project. So really the most important things here are preventing and eliminating blight within the city of Colorado Springs. It also implements the comprehensive plan and plan cause as well as home cause, which is the affordable housing plan for Colorado Springs. We pulled these from these specific plans to show how this URA plan will implement the comprehensive plan and affordable housing plan, along with the Lowell neighborhood concept plan and the Colorado Springs strategic plan as well. Diving into the financial analysis. All right, so we have about 390 units across both the phases. All of the rents are listed here for the 2024 HUD rent restrictions. So they range from about 1,300 a unit to about 2,400 a unit, with the average unit size about 520 square feet. So there are 3 things we look at with this financial analysis. The first is the eligible public improvements, which is on the screen here. The second is the but-for financial analysis, which I'll get into. And then the third is how much TIF increment will the project actually generate, and how does that support the project. So for the eligible improvements, we have about 8.5 million total, and this includes a lot of the right-of-way improvements, the parks, historic bridge preservation, utilities, streetscape, things like that. It also includes the cost of the value of the affordable units. So we look at the units that are between 70 and 80% of AMI and compare those to if they were at market rate, what is that value of keeping them affordable compared to if they were market rate units at 100% of AMI. So that value we estimate to be about 4.9 million for all of those units, which account for about 23% of each phase for these projects. So getting into Bristow House, that first phase, so we look at all the construction costs, which total about 63 million. So it's about 340,000 a unit or 654 per square foot. So it includes land costs just under 8 million, the hard costs about 38 million, and that includes about 2 million for hard costs for eligible improvements. Then we also have soft costs about 16.5 million. So we look at how this project performs by looking at the income and then comparing that to the expenditures and calculating the net operating income on an annual basis. So essentially, the effective gross income for this first phase is just under 4 million, largely coming from rental income. We account for a 5% vacancy factor, and then we also include other income, which could be application fees, pet fees, parking, things like that. Then we include the operating expenditures, which are about 26% of the gross income. And then we have the net operating income about 2.8 million. So for this first phase, we essentially do a lot of research to estimate what a target hurdle rate is, and this comes from a lot of third-party sources and looking at cap rates of projects that have recently sold. So we're using a 6.33% hurdle rate for this project. And we're comparing that to the actual yield on cost, which is the NOI divided by the development cost. So in the chart on the right, that first yellow box shows the current yield on cost of the project without any TIF or public subsidy. So it's performing at a 4.5% about. We then estimate what is that gap cost. So really that financial gap of this project won't move forward but for this support from a public subsidy or some other source. So if that gap is kind of accounted for, then it would reach that hurdle rate essentially for the project. So this first phase needs an 18.5 million financial gap to reach that hurdle rate. And then we include the TIF estimate, which I'll get into more in the next slide, but the TIF that would generate for just this specific project is about 2.5 million, and that's just from the property tax increment. So by including that in, we're hitting a yield on cost about 4.65%. And I'll note that we're using a market rate hurdle rate here versus something for affordable housing projects. So we're not expecting this project to really fulfill that whole gap, but we still need to get something closer in order for Toby to meet what he needs for the Chaffa and DOLA financing. So here we have the TIF revenue of the property tax increment. So we have this over the 25-year period. So we calculate it annually. So it's a total nominal value of about 4.7 million. And then we discount this back to a present value of today's dollars using a 5% discount rate. So that present value is about 2.5 million. Next little common. So for this second phase, a total project cost is about 65 million, so 317,000 per unit, or about $609 per square foot. So the land cost on this piece is about 6.5 million. Hard costs are about 41 million, with eligible improvements accounting for about 1.7 million of that. And then we have soft costs at 17 million. So again, looking at that static performance, so the effective gross income is about 4.5 million, largely coming from the rental income, and we also incorporate the 5% vacancy rate and the other income in that. And then operating expenditures are about 1.2 million annually, so about 26% of the gross income. And then the net operating income is about 3.3 million. So we have the same analysis here for the second phase using that same hurdle rate of 6.33%. This project is actually hitting a yield on cost of about 5.1%, with a project gap of about 12.6 million. So the TIF that we estimate would be generated, again, just from the property tax for this project is about 2.9 million. So by including that, the actual yield on cost is about 5.34%. So here we show a little bit more detail of how we're calculating the property tax increment. So the existing base value of both phases is about $689,000. And then we estimate the TIF share of what that pledge is from each tax district. So we're including 100% from the county, the city, as well as the library district and you all, the school board. So it's a total of about 54 mills that would be pledged to the URA. And then this shows that property tax increment for just that second phase for Lowell Commons. So this is at 2.9% in present value. The total value nominally across the 25 years is about 5.6 million. So getting into the school district impact specifically, so your current mill rate is about 40 mills, and we're assuming 100% of the project of that increment we pledged to the project. So with the current base value, the school district currently receives about $28,000 for these properties within the URA. So that will continue to be collected by the school district over those 25 years. Totaling about, I think that's $791,000 over that 25-year period.
Nice size.
And then essentially once that 25-year period is over, the school district will receive that full property tax benefit. So that's going to be about $475,000 annually. So a very large increase based on the development of Lowell and Bristow. So just kind of in summary here, we feel that this URA plan and project supports the Colorado Springs Comprehensive Plan and Affordable Housing Plan. It also really prevents blight and incentivizes new development and affordable development within downtown Colorado Springs. So eligible costs are about 8.5 million, and then this includes attainable workforce housing between 70 to 110% of AMI for the local workforce, as Toby mentioned. And then the static pro forma identifies a gap closure, about 31 million between both projects. The TIF amount from both projects is about 5.3 million. So again, we don't need that full 31 million to be filled for that gap analysis, but this 5 million is enough for this project to move forward and for Toby to get his funding and financing that he needs from CHAFA and DOLA.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do you have any closing thoughts on this?
No, I mean, Sarah did a good job. I mean, obviously there's a wealth of financial information in there, but you can see the level of nuance, that we run these numbers on.
I think the board appreciates how much easier the COP is.
So yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, when you look at the financial analysis and the detail that you guys go into, trying to bridge the gap between to reach that hurdle rate that you were talking about. Yeah, thank you for the detailed analysis. And I've known Toby for a while. I appreciate the passion that you have put behind this project. It's become a personal passion for you to get this done. So a lot of these areas in town, when I look back, and I've been a Colorado Springs resident for 25 years now, when I came here and moved here in the 90s and 2000, downtown was not what it is today. There were a lot of areas which were boarded up, blighted, and even there are some areas right now which qualifies for the same type of thing. Trash is being dumped out there. A lot of times homeless people live in those places. Superintendent Gall talks about running across homeless people all the time when he is running downtown.
And Toby had fires actually set on this property as well.
Yeah,
Fires.
And even that historic bridge, when you showed that picture, there is graffiti on both sides of those walls up there. So
that will eventually be an arts project by the community that will cover all that graffiti. That's part of the arts district expansion that we're working on. So.
Yeah, So thank you for bringing this, and we certainly need affordable housing for the workforce out here.
Yeah, just one last comment is the needs assessment for this project, for the low-income housing project portion. There were none under construction with a need of over 12,000 units in the primary market area. For this urban renewal section, the need was over 11,000 units with none under construction. So these are desperate needs for our overall community.
One request that I would make when these type of projects happen, and it especially comes in front of the school board, that your team, you are to work with Superintendent Gall in identifying areas where students can learn from this, whether it is going to be coming and learning about all the math and the architecture, the artwork that goes along with it. Our students are fully capable and very proficient at it. We engage our students.
So I would love that, and just as we've worked with the 4 colleges in town, there's numerous opportunities in the park area for us to re-envision that area, to work with Concrete Coyote, which they already do with School District 11. And then that rail line that bisects the property will be abandoned as part of the rail relocation, and that is a 2-mile stretch that's 50-foot wide that would be a perfect case study for D11 students to get involved with and say, what can this be for our community? Could it be like a skyline? Could it be an arts walk? And it literally bisects Colorado Springs, and Colorado Springs is not really planning for the future of what could be a massive amenity for our community. So I would love to get D11 students involved with that and saying what could be, and get the planning going, because the city's not planning for it right now.
We continue to want to be good partners with the city. The development of our city to offer variable types of housing, because there will be another project that comes here in a minute, is only upside to District 11's future as we continue to fight a decreasing number of children per household, and a lot of very traditional, what I'll just call flight from urban environments. Investing in the heart of downtown is always a win for District 11. I would love to see if we could find some interesting financial opportunities in what is the power of that blue wedge. So the hold harmless part of it creates a safe space for us, but is there an opportunity that if there is returned tax back to the district, that particularly when we think about future investments in recapitalizing the district, is there a way for us to be extending even our own COPs or other mechanisms that says, if this, then you have this promissory note, which gets us that much more leverage into our own conversation. So, that's really what I took away from much of your brief was you have 6 different ways that you're trying to close a gap. And we're really proud of ourselves that one way that we've tried to close a gap, which was a COP. But are there other ways within those mills that says, is there somebody who wants to create a financial vehicle that says, if I don't know what quite is the area covered by that blue triangle, but it could be something that we try and leverage as well in some of our own needs, particularly if we could make them tangential or connected to some of these URA type projects. It's very easy to say anything happening downtown is related to Palmer, is related to North, is related to any of our, what used to be a very robust set of schools downtown that now has become a fairly depleted space. So part of this comes from the Gold Hill Mesa project, which was part of the deal for URA for Gold Hill Mesa was to make an investment in the infrastructure of the area. And so I believe that's 21st Street, is that what it is?
Yep.
So 21st Street is now completely repaved, the water drainage is taken care of, there's a brand new light. But what we're trying to drive, particularly this board, is that infrastructure means education. So education is a part of that. So what's the one slice of that mill that then says 1 penny of every dollar that comes out of this goes actually to education as an infrastructure? If then within boundary of District 11, is there a way for us to create some of those vehicles? The TIF is very powerful for you to close gaps on larger projects And we're presented in a hold harmless way, because the state doesn't want it to be risk. But I think we can have an offshoot conversation, and this is just coming out as a live stream right now, of can we create that as our own vehicle? Our own vehicle, because you guys have done that because of the for-profit nature, and then you're able to use that money against it. And then we're always paralyzed by the nonprofit nature, but we're part of the infrastructure that has to happen. All those things that have to happen, how do those families not just live and love and laugh downtown, but how do they learn as part of that downtown as well? Because if, how many thousands of units? 12,000, I keep heard, 12,000.
24 if you combine the two sets.
Right, 24,000 units. Even the demographer, Shannon, would say to us, some of those are gonna be kids. Some of those are gonna be kids. And when they are kids, where do they go? So how do you say then, if I stay in the Gold Hill Mesa one, if you're gonna redo 21st Street when you do the project, how do you then do 1 penny on every dollar towards Midland Elementary School? Because those families deserve access to education as infrastructure, instead of the city seeing infrastructure as not included in education. Especially if you're a partner in the deal.
Yeah,
The board's
I mean,
a partner in this deal.
Yeah.
And we haven't quite developed that vehicle, but I think it could be an interesting space. And in full disclosure, Toby and I have met before to talk about this project and the advantage it can afford our staff into if they're talking about specific building here, but if you look at the variability of housing offered, which within the entirety of the project, every type of employee group in District 11 can find a space there that works for them and their family and their needs, instead of us just segmenting and saying, you only make this much so you can only live here. And you all are using very specific language of attainable and then workforce. What it really means is that everybody in District 11 can find a place to live there. And that's great for District 11. We're not saying you have to live there. We're saying now you have an opportunity. It's an option. So again, that's an infrastructure piece to us, which is, where do our employees work? When I worked in Oakland Unified, I had very few teachers that actually could afford to live in Oakland. Most of them commuted from the valley every day, because the cost of housing was just that extreme. And we couldn't quite figure our way around it. We have space, we have interesting vehicles for us to develop new living opportunities, and we benefit from it. Every time a student bumps into their teacher in the local grocery store, like their eyes just light up like, my God, my teacher shops for groceries? Like, I thought they just taught. That's all they could do is be at the school. And so there's a connection there. So I'll stop my rant.
Well,
So Brandon will help me figure out how to find a multiplier off the wedge.
And Colorado Springs, when you're talking about the housing opportunities in Oakland where you lived, Colorado Springs is kind of trending in the same direction, where most of the workforce have to kind of go to the suburbs or outside the city to find affordable housing any longer, because it's become prohibitively expensive in the inner city level. So this is a way to provide for that demographic of people. So to the board again, this is coming, the board approval that is required is primarily for the financial arrangement, the TIF agreement, which we are talking about, the blue area out there, that portion of new tax revenues being diverted to the URA, and the board and the school district is held harmless. We do not have the authority about zoning and all the other things that go with it. Those all
There's a lot more steps to go through.
Yeah, a lot more
even
steps,
after,
but
yeah.
I mean, the next step in the process after going through all the taxing entities to get the final approval, you need to go in front of the city council.
Correct. Well, they actually need to go through planning commission, then city council.
Okay.
That's when the final decision will be made. We're targeting November timeframe for this one.
So, great. So our scope is just a financial arrangement. Planning commission and city council considers other areas of it. Questions from the board regarding this?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, Director Backus.
So when I'm looking at one of the slides, first of all, I was surprised when we talk about 100% or lower for the AMI, that rents will range from $1,300 to $2,400 a unit. For some reason, I'm so out of touch. For some reason I thought they would be a lot less. Having said that, I'm looking also at the average unit size, of 521 square feet. So could you give me a range of what those apartment sizes are actually gonna be?
Yeah, the smallest ones will be studios at 411 square feet, and the largest ones, it's not up there, but about 700 square feet. Those are commensurate with what you see in downtowns in Boston or, San Francisco or
New York.
New York is a great example. I saw one the other day in New York, 100 square feet was so they're just getting smaller and smaller. But no, the AMIs have shot up. Part of the inflationary spike that we've seen that impacted the financing for this project has also impacted wages. And so I can remember a couple of years ago where that was $50,000 a year instead of $100,000 for the AMI for El Paso County. And so we have seen large wage increases across the board or in many areas. And I was shocked when I saw those Chaffa tables that they have increased that much.
Well, and I think when you're taking a look at these rents, one of the things that would help make that decision to live here as opposed to maybe another location that had a similar rent with a similar size is, didn't I hear you say that the rents would stay stable until they change through Chaffa?
They will increase as HUD increases them, but not with the market. And so market generally increases quite rapidly. We will see these, you will see these get cheaper and cheaper as the years go on comparatively. Obviously you have to get a project to pencil to get it out of the ground. But yes, the long-term deed restriction will be a major element, a bonus for the community.
And so I took your map. Thank you for all the information because it really made it easy. So I drove that area over the weekend, and I really applaud you going into that area because I can't look at a piece of land and say, oh, we can level this out and I can't do that. So I look at what you're embarking upon, and thank you for doing that. I find that that parcel of land truly defines for me what it means to have the Urban Rural Authority come through and actually eradicate a blighted area. And the buildings, and I said this earlier to you, that the buildings that are there are very stylish, they're very good looking. You never hear anything about criminal activity. So it really has settled in that part of the city to make it viable for our teachers, for our older folks and so forth. One of the questions I've had about people who live downtown is access to grocery stores, access to doctors and optometrists, and can you add to my data bank here?
Absolutely. That was part of the matrix that the quad laid out, was those exact concerns. So from a grocery store perspective, Bread and Butter is 2 blocks away. Okay. We are working with the city to complete the legacy loop, which Frederick Olmsted laid out in the 1800s. So we're a little slow as a city completing that, but it will be a mile by the Santa Fe Trail to Walmart on 8th Street. And then also we anticipate having significant deliveries from Amazon and other third-party deliverers. We'll also work with Silver Key, who will do their Meals on Wheels program. In terms of medical services, once again, Silver Key's not Meals on Wheels. Silver Key's transportation service will work with us, as will the independent centers. We're also next to those transit stops that I mentioned as part of that matrix, but then the Peak Vista Community Clinic, which serves exactly the population that we plan on having, is within 2 blocks. So your doctor's office is a 2-block walk. And so that was one of the strategic decisions to have a federally certified health clinic right there. Was a major consideration in the site location.
I will say also adding a grocery store has been a huge goal for the Downtown Development Authority and the Downtown Partnership. We need more units. We need to see more residential units going in before they'll actually build a full-blown grocery store, like something like a Sprouts or a Whole Foods down there. But that is one of our target goals.
I live downtown, and it's a lot closer than you think to both the facilities just west of the highway in Old Colorado City. They get kind of labeled as Old Colorado City,
Yeah.
but there's kind of a Walmart Safeway over there, and actually even
Uinta or where are you
Nevada, there is a safe.
Nevada and
You're
Cheyenne.
talking,
Yeah.
Nevada and Cheyenne.
Yeah, and then I was gonna say, and then south of downtown, once you get across the south side of I-25, people don't even realize there's a Chick-fil-A right there.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks the nearest Chick-fil-A to the office is the one up on the way to Coronado. It's 2 miles closer to go on the one just, and I hate to say the District 12 boundary. But, as an example, Dry and I spoke just a couple of weeks ago about, I happened to get by Ivywild for my first time, and I thought to myself, my God, what a treasure of a school, how could that not be in the portfolio anymore? Because I'm only seeing the result of the URA transformation of an entire neighborhood around the reimagination of what had been a challenged neighborhood and a failed school that we couldn't attract families to. And so what I see now is like, God, I wish I had a school there. And the answer is no, the reason that that's great is because URA was able to rethink that school. And so all of that area now is very connected to downtown. I think it's actually less than a mile from downtown to where Ivywild is.
It's so
We just don't
connected.
think about it as the same neighborhood because it goes underneath the highway to get there.
Yeah, the urban planning manager for downtown actually oversees the Ivywild area as well because it's becoming homogeneous, it's coming together.
Well, and I also thank you for pointing out that the wedge, the impact to the state budget for School Finance Act is gonna be $28,000 and whatever the thing is, which is not much of a hit. So it all comes together. Looks good to me.
It's a lot of brighter brains working on this project than me. And
Who's
literally
sitting next to you?
well, yeah, she's a lot brighter. But, working with the quad students was probably one of the highlights of my life, and it shows what young people working together can really accomplish extraordinary things.
Okay, any other questions from the board on this one? We have one more project for URA project. Seeing none, thank you for your presentation again to the board. This will come as an action item in front of the board at the September 4th board meeting. Thank you, Toby, for being present here, and I hope some of the things that you talked about with the student engagement, you can engage with the superintendent and his team and get our students in there. And then the rest of it, we can figure it out, what Superintendent Paul was talking about, looking at creative ways so that we will.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for this type of project. We built this as a model for what can be done in many other areas to address this severe need.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next team.
Brendan, did you want to tee up anything before this one?
I have a different colored graph now.
With a different mustard up there.
With the different shade of mustard. So I want to introduce Andy Merritt and Julie Brooks, both with the Kevin O'Neill Group, and they've been great partners in this project. This is the OneVeLa project. Of course, there's been a lot of media and a lot of news around this project. We're excited about it. It's a high-rise apartment project with some ground level retail in our urban core. I won't go too much into it because obviously you've had the slides, and I wanted, for time's sake, I want to turn it over to Andy. But we've got lots of comments and happy to answer any questions on that too. So Andy, I'm going to turn it over to you for this.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So just going to run through real quick, and we'll go fast so we can get to questions and what you really want to talk about. But I want to give you a little background to who we are first, because it's relevant to why we're doing this specific project. We'll give you an overview of the project, talk about the benefits in the district. So let me start with Kevin O'Neill, our founder and CEO, is a native here in the Colorado Springs region. Parents were educators and school administrators, Fountain Fort Carson District, for example, Widefield District. And so he has been a serial entrepreneur here in this community and has built the simplest way to define what we are as an asset management company. Meaning we invest in and help operate and manage a lot of different companies, ranging from things like windows to medical waste disposal to defense technology companies. in that vein, but Kevin has always been committed to downtown. He cares deeply about downtown. So starting in 2014, he started acquiring buildings in downtown to create what you see here, the Catalyst Campus for Technology and Innovation. That is now, it is now 9 buildings, 250,000 square feet in the east side of downtown. Actually, we need to talk about Shook's Run, because we're just a little further up Shook's Run from Toby's project, and run right along it. When he bought those buildings, frankly, that was fairly blighted. He bought those first 3 buildings in this complex for $45 a square foot because they were empty and in disarray, and turned that into an innovation campus for the defense technology sector. And that houses government labs, small defense companies, all the way up to large companies like Viasat and Lockheed Martin and the names that you would know. And it's all about creating jobs here in our community, which we have very successfully done. So just looking at our economic impact from 2015 when the campus started to open through 2021, so including the pandemic, that campus has been responsible for creating almost 2,600 jobs. I would tell you when we update this, hopefully next year, that's going to jump up significantly. And $220 million of labor income here in our community. And so this project flows out of what we have seen through all our experiences in managing and operating companies, the need for workforce. So Toby's project is absolutely amazing, and I encourage you to support it because he is solving a very important underserved niche, really not served niche in this community at this point. Our project, we also believe, serves a very unique niche. It's a little bit different workforce. It's going to be more of the professional workforce. And that, in our mind, runs from school teachers, firefighters, law enforcement, all the way up to the high technology workforce that we are trying to recruit. And there is a category of workforce that wants to live in a robust, vibrant downtown environment. They love a high-rise type setting. We are just one of our companies here in town, BlueStack, is a 140-person company that, as we speak, is trying to hire 50 more people. They're not hiring them all locally because they can't find the level all locally. They're hiring some locally, but they are having to compete for workforce all over the country and attract them here. So it's those kind of experiences that have motivated us behind this project. The other thing I will tell you is Kevin, because of his background, is committed to education. So as we talk through working with the school district, we are very interested in that. With that Catalyst campus and our goal to get workforce, we started really focusing heavily on working with our higher education community here locally. So, for example, Kevin was the primary funder for the UCCS Cybersecurity Research and Education Center up on North Nevada. We have even funded a liaison position that works between the academic departments at the university and the Catalyst campus, connecting industry to the educators and to the students up there. So we started with a heavy focus on higher education, but we have been shifting that, and we do want to work with you, Mr. Gall, on how do we engage the students in this project specifically, but we are also working through Catalyst Campus to engage the district in other ways. For example, we set up a nonprofit that runs that campus that I showed you. That nonprofit led the effort to go after a National Science Foundation grant. We call it the RISE project. It has engaged with the new STEM school that the district is working to create. The Catalyst Camp is leading that project of multiple organizations, including UCCS, USAFA here in town. They won a $1 million planning grant from the National Science Foundation that has made them eligible, and just last week submitted for a $160 million grant from the National Science Foundation to help create a resilient, robust space sector in our community, including the workforce pipeline component of that down into K through 12 education. So we are trying intentionally already to push down into K through 12, and we look forward to figuring out other opportunities to expand that engagement. Julie?
All right, so I am sure a lot of you are very familiar with the Olympic Museum and of course Widener Field, and anything in between those two in that quadrant is extremely blighted and there is very little activity. So our goal, while we have just a very small 1 acre 0.09, we have a great opportunity to have a huge impact on the skyline and density for that part of town, which will help drive a lot more activity and engagement with the community and hopefully even more growth in the future. So that's that.
So this project is a $202 million project with 404 units that it will create. We have committed in the project that for the life of the URA, the 25 years, that at least 10% of those units, or 40 units, will remain at or below 100% AMI. You can see in this chart right now, 28.5% of our units are at 103% or below AMI as we've priced this out. We think this project, it creates its own community in a way when you think 404 units, and it's a mix of economic spheres that will be in this, because you're going to see different size units and different price units, ranging from $1,700 up to over $6,000. So it's going to have its own community and its own life to it that will combine different kinds of people living there together. The average unit size is 839 square feet. And as Jiraiya mentioned, we have 7,900 square feet of Class A amenity space, and then we also have retail space. One of the things I want to emphasize on the amenity space is, as I talk about creating community, all that amenity space, and this is going to be, this will be a product that does not exist in our community. It will have aspects to the amenities that don't exist in our community in a single project. But that will be available to every resident. So we're not differentiating residents and creating luxury spaces for the luxury units and different spaces for the AMI units. It's available to everybody. So we think this is going to be a very high-class product that will attract people that want to live there, that want to be in that downtown setting, that want to have that kind of amenity quality that doesn't exist, and people that want to live in a higher-rise building. It is about 50 feet taller than the current tallest building in our community, so it's about 300 feet tall, so 27 stories total. You can see we are trying to make this an attractive view with a lot of glass exterior so that it will reflect and will not detract from the skyline. It will reflect its neighboring, the neighboring community. It will reflect the mountains in the windows, so it will be an attractive visual in the community.
And as far as the amenities go, our hope is to create a real Class A product that you couldn't get in the normal rental market. For those who might go out and buy some $700 million home, they would have the same kind of finishes within that apartment dwelling. And some of the apartment floor plans will be what we call a duplex. So I know a couple of the communities in town have a loft-like setting. Well, this would be a full 2 floors. And would be really interesting for some folks, for families and those higher executives. So, of course, the Infinity Edge pools will have concierge services. They have custom cabinetry in all of the kitchens, built-ins to maximize on the storage. So that's kind of the gist of where they're trying to go with the amenities, would be like 5-star hotel, luxury kind of living.
And just some more photos of the kinds of things that, conceptual things that we would have in the building. I'm going to leave some of these slides. We have them in here. I'll skip through them fast because Sarah will cover them. But we do fit into the community's plannings. You will hear from Sarah about, yes, we need this financing to be able to make the numbers work on this project. So we believe we are starting the transformation of a blighted area of our community. Yes, it's one project, but that surrounding property also needs to be redeveloped. We think this will drag other projects forward as this develops. It is a but-for project. We need this financing to be able to make the numbers work. And then I think I will hand it off to Sarah.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so this presentation is very similar to the one earlier, so I'll get into it. You both did a great introduction to the project and everything. So this is a combination of these 4 parcels in downtown Colorado Springs, just across from the Olympic Museum. They're all under single ownership. The existing buildings on there are currently vacant. So there was 2 warehouse and storage facilities and 2 single-family homes. But I believe both those homes were used as businesses. So there's no actual.
They're now vacant.
Okay, yeah. So there's no residents that were living there.
They have asbestos in them, so they're no longer used for anything.
Not very livable. All right, so as was mentioned, it's 27-story mixed-use development, about 400 total units, and it includes about 8,000 square feet of ground floor retail. As you mentioned, about 10% of the units will be tied to affordable housing at 100% of AMI or below for the full 25 years of the project. It also includes structured parking with 48 public spaces. Other public improvements include sidewalks, right-of-way improvements, streetscape, landscaping as well. So to highlight the objectives of the URA plan, first and foremost, this eliminates blight within downtown Colorado Springs. It also implements a comprehensive plan of Plan Cause and affordable housing plan of Home Cause as well. And it really encourages and incentivizes private development that otherwise would not occur. So here are the specific objectives from the comprehensive plan that this project supports, as well as from the Home Cause affordable housing plan as well, with the inclusion of those affordable units. And this also supports the Colorado Springs strategic plan as well. All right, we'll get into the financial analysis. So 400 units, it's a market rate project with that commitment of 10%, 40 units at 100% of AMI or below. All the rents are currently ranging from about $1,700 a unit to $6,300 a unit, with an overall average rent of about $2,900. The average unit size is about 839 square feet, and then we have that ground floor retail included as well, with rent about $3.35 a square foot. And we anticipate that ground floor retail will likely be some sort of restaurant, food and beverage of some sort, but there's no commitment or anything currently. So again, for the financial analysis, this first piece that we look at is the eligible improvements. So these total improvements are about $23 million. So this includes the structured parking with those public spaces. Also, the structured parking, because we need that included to be able to achieve that higher density to include more units. We also, similar to Toby's project, we look at the value of those affordable units. So we compare that 10% at 100% of AMI to what they would be at market rate, and we use the market rate of 120% of AMI. So kind of comparing the difference between the two and calculating that value of those affordable units, which is estimated about $3.8 million for this project. We then include also all the right-of-way improvements with sidewalk, curb and gutter, streetscape, the utilities, the demolition and abatement of the existing buildings, and also higher end facade and art that is above traditional standards included in this project. So the construction costs total about $200 million, so it's about $500,000 per unit. So this is a higher end luxury product. It's also a very large development with the 27 stories and 400 units. So it's very unique in that way, and that has a higher overall construction cost. So it's about $584 per square foot. So the land cost is about $7.4 million, and then we have the hard costs at about $156 million, which includes about $19 million of the eligible hard costs of public improvements as well. And then soft costs at about $39 million. So we look at the static performance of this project. So the effective gross income is about $15.5 million a year, with about $14 million coming from the rental income. We include a vacancy of 5.5%, and then we also have other income included for parking, application fees, pet fees, things like that at about $2.2 million. The operating expenditures are about $3.4 million annually, which is 22% of the gross income. So all of that calculates to a net operating income of about $12.1 million. So here we look at the project with and without the support from the TIF. So we're using that same hurdle rate as the previous project of 6.33%. That is really the market rate hurdle rate that is expected from projects in this area. So we then calculate what the actual yield on cost is. So that NOI divided by the development cost. So with that, the actual yield on cost for the project is about, it's hard to read from here, 5.97%, so just under 6%. So it has a project gap of about $11.4 million. And I just want to kind of compare that gap is much lower than those eligible public improvements of that $23 million. So with the current cost at $200 million, by including the TIF, and this is a property TIF as well as sales tax TIF, So with both of those are estimated about 11 million total for the project, and I'll dive into that detail in a second. So with that included in the project, it then achieves a yield on cost about 6.31%. So getting really, really close to that hurdle rate, which is what we want to see, and allows this project to then move forward. So just to identify what goes into that property tax increment calculation, the existing base value of the site is about $509,000. And then we have the TIF share that's expected to be pledged from each taxi district, with 100% coming from the county, 100% from the city, as well as the school district, and then 50% from the library district, and 60% from the Downtown Development Authority as well. So it's a total mills of about 55.9 mills pledged to the project for the URA. So with that mill rate accounted for, the increment for the project is about 18.1 million over the 25 years. We then discount that back to today's dollars using a 5% discount rate. So it's about 9.7 million for the property tax increment. For the sales tax, so we have 7,900 square feet of ground floor commercial. Assuming it's a food and beverage retail, we assume about $400 in sales per square foot annually. And then we're accounting for, from the county, 0.75% of the sales tax will be pledged to the URA, and from the city, 1.75% of the sales tax. So the sales tax revenue from that increment generated over the 25 years is about 2.4 million. And then we discount that 5% rate, and it's about 1.3 million over those 25 years. So the impact for the school district, the current mill levy is about 40 mills. Assuming 100% of that would be pledged to the URA, that would then go to the URA, and then for the base value, it's about 21,000 that's currently being collected, and that base value will continue to be collected by the school district over the 25 years. And then once the project is completed and the TIF clock ends after that 25-year period, it's going to generate about 719,000 annually due to that development. So it's a very large increase over that 25 years that would then, once that's over, would be collected by the school district. So in conclusion, we really feel this supports kind of eliminating blight within downtown, as well as supporting the comprehensive plan and affordable housing plan for Colorado Springs. Looking at the financial analysis, this meets the but-for financial gap analysis. It also, the eligible costs exceed that of what the project would receive from the TIF revenue and that but-for financial gap. So they're putting in even more than what they would be receiving through the URA. So with the static pro forma of the gap closure of 11 million, the TIF revenue essentially meets that, supporting the project to reach that hurdle rate that it needs to be financially feasible. So I think that's the last slide. Happy to take any questions, or if there's anything else, Dry, you'd like to say?
No, I think that was summed up good for time's sake. I think we can jump into questions.
Perfect. So Toby, your project doesn't have any retail establishments in there that generate sales tax?
No, it does not.
Okay, great. Oh, questions? Dr. Mack.
So, to the board, I gave out the downtown map and showed where number 63 is, right there by the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum. To me, that's a prime downtown location. And when I take a look at, would you go back a couple slides?
Yeah.
Thanks. Wait.
You want the map or the?
Where it shows that the impact to us, the school district property tax impact. That's this one. So where we look at what we gather from the tax base now, it's 21,000, which is, I hate to say it, but a drop in the bucket. 21,000 is still a lot of money. One of the things that concerns me about this is that because this location, a prime location downtown, that it is going to be developed in sooner than 25 years. And I would like to see the district be able to access the additional revenue before that 25-year period. So if we're looking at $700,000 in that end of the agreement, should we go into it, I'm looking at the next 10 years. And is there another 500,000 that we're gonna gain instead of 21,000? Are we going to be able to benefit from somebody else coming in with a different plan that elevates the tax base for us? Whether or not we actually get children from the apartments that are being offered, I don't know. I am concerned about gentrification, where we're pushing people out and they can't afford to live here. And this only increases my concern. And it's interesting that the two projects came at the same time. We have one that is really reaching out to people who have lived in Colorado Springs, that want to come to Colorado Springs, that maybe are moving out of a bigger home into a smaller home, all kinds of things. When I take a look at this project, and again, I'm looking at prime real estate in downtown Colorado Springs and a 25-year return on our investment. I think that the return is too long. I think we need to leave our options open.
Can I address that real quick?
Yeah,
Sure.
you want to take that financial aspect of it, or you want to go?
No, well, I was just gonna say, so you're still gonna be getting backfilled from the state. You're not, it's kind of 6 one way, half a dozen the other. If something else develops there, you'll get less money from the state and more money from, if it's not a URA, it could be a smaller project that doesn't generate as much. It's, as a total district boundary, you're gonna get backfilled for whatever goes to this project. So you're not gonna lose, so I just wanted to dispel that argument.
Let me just share with you, and to your point, we have universal lunch program or food program for all of our kids. The state didn't realize that so many school districts would jump onto that. And so now they're in trouble. And when I take a look at a project and I look at 21,000 coming out of the School Finance Act that could go toward feeding kids, or putting our investment into a project that's gonna reap benefits for us in 25 years, it doesn't equate for me.
Oh, get it, but that's more of a state legislation issue, right? Like, that's something that there's no control of
That's where we
here,
are.
you know, but that's a bigger thing. But I did wanna touch on the gentrification aspect of it, because we've had a lot of conversations with Mill Street in particular, which is just to the south of where the Widener development is. And one of the things that we looked at with these projects is the talking about OneVeLa, the people that are going in OneVeLa are not gonna go into Mill Street. It's a totally different product. The product doesn't exist. It's actually bringing net new people into that area. It's not demoing out houses and saying, okay, you all are now out, these people are moving in, because it's a completely different product. So it's actually net new, not coming in and saying we're gonna replace, lower income housing with higher income housing, because there's nothing, on these lots right now. It's gonna be its own unique product. Do you wanna add anything to that?
Yeah, because there's literally nothing there now.
I know, I
So-
drove the block and looked at it, and I'm thinking you go across to Widener Field, having looked at those, and the price ranges for those apartments don't go up to $6,000 a month. But they have 400 units there, and as I'm looking at the apartments that are being offered, they were very honest, both the person downstairs who greeted and the person who took us around, and said, and next year we will be breaking ground across the street and one over on another 400 units. And after that's completed, we're gonna cross to the next parcel, we're gonna build another 400 units. We're talking 1,200 units in a
Right.
price range that doesn't go up to maybe $6,000 a month, every month. So,
But prices are gonna go up in this town if we don't build enough housing. So we have a shortfall of at least 27,000 housing units in Colorado Springs. So not building units doesn't make that better. It means even those folks that live in Mill Street, as the supply does not meet the demand, then the prices for everybody goes up, including those folks that currently own homes in Mill Street neighborhood. Our project doesn't displace any of them.
No,
It's a
it
completely different product in a different part of the area.
that's true. And it will attract people who maybe don't necessarily live here now, with the amount of business that is growing here in Colorado Springs. I understand that. But I also think that because it's such valuable property downtown, that it will be developed within the next 5, 10, 15 years, as opposed to 25 years. And I think the district will benefit from the additional revenue that will come in. I think when we talk about apartment complexes that are going up everywhere, the constant conversation is we still don't have enough housing. And I agree with that, and I agree, you're not displacing anyone. And I'm not talking about the fact that gentrification means that we're kicking people out. I'm talking about how it is that the rents keep elevating to a point where normal people, those of us sit on the board, we're all normal people, and maybe you are too, we couldn't afford to live there. And so who are we attracting?
At $1,700 a month, we're attracting people that are below 100%
For how big of a
AMI.
place?
What's that?
For how big of a place? How many square feet?
About 400 square feet for those places. And there are people that want to, there are people, just like Toby's units are around 400 and, or you had units that are in the 400 square feet range as well. Because there are people that are fine living in that want to live, they're looking to live in an environment. The size of the place isn't their primary motivating factor. They want to live in a downtown environment. For example, I met with a classmate of mine, West Point graduate classmate of mine in Chicago. He lives in downtown Chicago. He has enough money to live anywhere he wants to, but he wants to live in a downtown environment. He doesn't want to own a car. That's what he prefers. He wants to be able to walk or ride his bike everywhere he goes. So he wants a housing product that's in downtown. Our BlueStack that I mentioned, they have people that want to live in a downtown environment. Our Catalyst campus, we have people that live in all those apartment buildings that have gone up around the campus because they want to live where they can walk to work, they can walk to a restaurant to grab lunch, breakfast, dinner, they can go to Widener Field. There are people that want to live in that downtown setting. A section of the workforce that is critical to our community as well. There are teachers that will work in your district or administrators that want to be able to jump on their bike and ride over to Palmer High School, as opposed to having to live outside the city where they're driving in. They can live in it. So it's not going to be a product that is going to be attractive to everybody. Absolutely not. But it's a product that's attractive to certain people, that fills a niche that this community right now does not have.
And I'll add Widener Widener kind of dipped their toes in this in the project that you're talking about, but they've got micro units that are actually under 400 square feet. And they were very quick to go. But I still want to come back to your comment about the district gaining revenue from if something else was developed there. The district is going to get revenue.
If you can go back to that slide.
Yeah, under regard any scenario. So there's not going to be a net loss to the district whether this goes in.
You're right. Widener did not put in the square footage. I didn't have the square footage for Widener.
So the other thing is,
sorry, I interrupted you.
To your comment about this being developed, well, we own the properties, and this is what we're trying to build on this. This property downtown in that section, because of the way it's zoned as form-based zoning, because of the amenities that are going up around those properties are getting more and more valuable every year. That also has a cost. When you go to pencil out any type of project, you've got to figure out what you can finance.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't build whatever you want to. The cost to build on that goes up because the cost of the base property itself goes up, which means the product, which means the product you have to build has to then be able to amortize that cost into the project, which drives sizes of your project. So it's not just that somebody's just going to swoop in and buy this property and build a 6-story apartment building. The numbers aren't going to work on this property. It's 1 acre of property. That's all it is. It's not, you have to go high when you're on that small a lot at $7.8 million. You have to go high to be able to make the numbers work. That's partly what drives what we're doing. And I will just say, when we've gone out to the finance markets in this country, there's a skepticism in those markets about Colorado Springs and doing projects like this, any projects of size. So coming in with a product like this that's unique, that has been very well received in the finance markets, because they're saying, yeah, this is a unique product, it fills a unique niche, and therefore we are interested in financing this project, presuming we can get to that 6.3% hurdle rate to be able to get there to finance it. If we were below that, we're not going to get the financing for that project.
That's why you need the diff.
Yeah, right. So that's the other thing, is you got to be able to finance whatever it is you want to build. Now, the Widener projects had a lot more property. They can build a little bit lower, and they can build they can build a larger scope project because they have more property. We have 1 acre here. So whoever builds there has got to deal with those realities.
Well, I still think when we take a look at income to disposable income, that we have so many already downtown that the niche that this is filling is for a very small niche of people who can afford $6,000 a month. So that argument about being unique and being able to bring in that level, that's an argument, that's fine. But as we're talking about affordable housing, attainable housing, about taking care of our own, and the impact that it has on us as a district, and when I do think about what else could go on that site to make it cost effective, I'm not in that business, so I don't know. But I'm looking at what you're offering or what the project is, and it doesn't equate. It doesn't benefit us in a way that I can directly relate the fact that in 2 years from now, if our enrollment stays stable, that we won't be looking at laying off teachers or closing schools. I'm still looking for a way in which we can maximize the income that comes to us either through taxes or through increased enrollment. And I don't see a lot of folks coming into the apartments, any of these apartments, in that experience that they had. It's very strange that Urban Renewal Authority had the walking tour on Saturday before this.
It was actually the Downtown Development Authority, which
downtown?
is, that's another organization, but sometimes we get confused together.
Mhm.
Yeah, different group.
Well, that's good to know. I'm glad I mentioned it. So when I look at $700,000 loft just outside of downtown, I'm not seeing that that's rented or purchased by families who are gonna send kids to us. I don't see folks in some of the other properties that had kids who were gonna send kids to us. And we're about growing our enrollment. We're about, and I give a compliment again to our superintendent for the ways in which he's been able to reorganize our thinking so that we didn't close schools. When I came on the board 3 years ago, I thought we were gonna be closing schools, and we're not. All of our schools are fully funded so that if we can hire them and they're good for us, we'll hire our staff. That's a huge thing for us. And I wanna make sure that we are planning ahead so that we can continue on that track. I don't wanna see schools close. I wanna see more families, whether they have to drive in or whether they are in their local community. And I don't see advantage for this to District 11.
May I make one more comment?
Yeah.
So, and I hear you on dwindling enrollment, I absolutely do. I think, and it's a very fair and valid, issue for District 11. I don't know what would go there that's gonna solve that problem. So whether that's a gas station or whether that's, some townhome units or whatever, I don't know if anything's gonna maximize or increase, if off of the project alone, more than this would, because this at least is giving you an opportunity to expose people to the urban core, more people coming in, more families. It's exposing, as Andy alluded to in kind of the beginning of the presentation, all these jobs that are coming in, the heavy focus on DoD. That is an immediate benefit to the district alone. The more jobs that because I think another goal for the district is keeping graduates here and not having graduates have to go somewhere else to be able to live or to be able to have a career. And so the more projects that we do like this, it's bringing industry, it's bringing careers, it's bringing more people into our urban core. I think there's very good odds that if you had, someone, young coming out to Colorado Springs for one of these jobs, working at Catalyst campus, and they're living in one of these units and they're blessed to make a good income because their skills are highly sought after, I think they're gonna wanna continue to live in the urban core, as they marry, as they have kids, whatever it may be, they're gonna be attracted to this environment and they're naturally gonna wanna go to these schools. So it's an opportunity to capture them right out of the gate, and it's not just some, it's a lot of them. And so from a financial perspective, if you don't lose any money at all, and if you're attracting high industry professionals, plus providing 10% of your units at 100% AMI, which does speak to, I think a lot of the things that even the last project spoke to, then it's a win-win, because you're actually bringing more industry and you're growing the pot. The other factor that we didn't talk about, and Thomas got some of this as well as Jill when I met with them. I owe you a copy of it, but as an impact report that the URA did on what the ripple effect benefits are all these projects. When these projects go in, we're hoping that we get catalytic effects. So more retail that comes in, more restaurants that come in, a grocery store, all these different aspects that you will be able to get tax from. Now, of course, the state reduces the amount that you get based on that. So it's kind of 6 one way, half a dozen the other. My point is that I don't think anything else is gonna go in there. I think this actually gives you the best chance at increasing your enrollment based off the size of those lots and based off of the scope of the project. And I mean, I bet on it.
Okay, first I'll come to you, Thomas. Dr. Comfort, getting your feedback on this, and you explained that with your graph, so for clarity's sake, for the board and the community too. What we get right now is on that column that says base data, base number out there, which is about $21,000. That amount, and going down till 2049, we will still receive from the taxes that are being collected. That's not going to be backfilled by the state.
That's correct.
Great. The column that's right next to it, that's the increased income, that's going to be backfilled by the state.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So we are essentially held harmless for the additional taxing revenue that if the school board approves this, it sends to the URA. The $700,000 that we get in 2050, we still get the same amount of it in every year, and we don't need to wait till 2050 to get that $700,000.
That's correct. From the school district standpoint, it would be as if it wasn't a TIF that was financing it, and it was happening on its own, and assessed value was just increasing.
Yeah.
Right? Our bottom line experiences that in the exact same way.
And then to circle this back to what Jaraya was bringing up about here and what you talked about too, right now we get 0 students from that lot out there. With the 400 units that go up, if we only get 10 students, that's 10 more than what we are getting at this point in time. Just to define that scope out there. For you, sir, the demand out there, we talked a lot about 400 units, 1,200 units going up. I'm assuming you have done some type of, market analysis to ensure that those units are at the cost that you priced it at is going to get filled, and that's why you are in this market.
We've done extensive analysis of that, and our partners in the project VELA, they have built these kind of projects in other cities, and their experience has been, so they've gone into neighborhoods like this that were lacking in development, blighted areas, built projects like this, and to Jaray's comment earlier, they became catalytic projects for that surrounding neighborhood and led to additional development there. And they have found these kind of unique projects in a community like ours they have an attraction in and of themselves for people who want to, they're not just looking to live in an apartment, they're looking to live into something unique like this, a higher rise building, a building with the level of quality amenity decks that this has. They're looking for that kind of product. So there will be people in the market that will want to relocate here, but there will be people from outside this market that will come here because of the product, based on the experience of our team.
Okay, a couple more, and I'll come to you, Thomas. Just for the board's awareness, there is another URA project that District 20 just recently approved. It's called Project Garnet, and that is, Jaraya can talk about a little bit more. That's going to redevelop the previous Hewlett-Packard facility out there, and Integris, which is
Garden of the Gods?
What's that?
On Garden of the Gods?
In Rock Rimmon, kind of back behind there, behind the Marriott.
Same area.
Yeah, and
side of the road.
it is a URA project. District 20 approved that
Correct.
TIF agreement. The reason I bring that is Integris, which is the outside company that's going to move into that location, it's going to bring how many jobs? 600,000 more additional jobs out there?
It was a significant, I'd have to go back and look at the
Yeah.
materials, but it was a significant.
Yeah,
amount
if
of
I remember
jobs.
right, it was put into two phases. The first phase was 600 jobs and an additional second phase,
Like
which
500, I think.
yeah, something more or whatever it is. So there is potential for all these businesses coming from outside, which is going to attract more people for more housing on the market out there. The last thing that I will come back to you, Ajaya, this project especially has attracted a lot of community feedback. It's been in the news.
All
What-
good.
What are you doing from that aspect as far as the community engagement piece goes with the surrounding neighborhood, with the community at large? And I also want to remind the board that we are looking at it from the financial aspect of it, the the
Right.
size of the building, all those things, that goes to the planning commission and that goes to the city council after that. But how are you engaging the community in ensuring that their voice is being heard in this?
So we've been working with an existing council member on that. We have done that in other projects, and so we hired a PR firm that has experience setting up the kind of community engagement events that we need to do. So we are working through that strategy in conversation with council members as to what that could look like. And so we will be doing a different kind of events. We're trying to do not just one standard event for everything, but do different kind of processes that will have outreach components to engage the community and have conversations. We are hearing from the community, both good and bad. We've had lots of feedback of all different types. We've had feedback from people here in the community that would want to live in it. We've had feedback from others that don't like the project, obviously. So we have been working through that, and we expect to launch that here shortly. I don't want to go into details because it's not all finalized. I don't want to say something here that then would not happen because.
Can you all, especially because these are public, can you refresh everyone's memory of the sequence here?
Sure.
This is a financing vehicle, that's what you're asking the board for. If members of our community do or do not support the actual project, the avenue is not the Board of Education.
Correct.
The avenue is what are those next hurdles
City council.
that need to be, is the project approved? Does this vehicle now mean that you're breaking ground in June? No. So just
We still have a long ways to go.
Everybody.
So, and they still have to go through their development plan, review process. So this essentially gets all the financing pieces in place for URA designation, but there's still quite a bit of steps to go through just on the planning department
And then if the
side.
whole thing falls apart, we're on the hook for how much?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? I just wanna get
And
clear.
the agreement would be terminated because if it wouldn't be a URA,
Then there would
it's-
be no URA.
there's
So just
no
like
agreement.
we went through a COP to decide where to make investments, now we're at the planning part of that,
Correct.
right? You have to have a visual for you to be able to pitch a plan for us to say, kind of makes enough sense, that's your work, you're the developers. We won't stand in your way from a taxing perspective. And
Exactly.
now for the community to decide, love it, hate it, somewhere in between. And as we saw city council just last week on a non-URA project, but on an annexation, for it and then against it.
Against-
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
community has the chance to have their
Absolutely.
voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be opportunities at planning commission too.
But without this financing, the numbers
Yes.
don't work, so therefore, we're not going to planning and then to council and all that stuff for a vote for approval on the project. Because if we don't have the financing, then there's no project to proceed with.
And so that's why it's coming in
Got it.
front of the school district first for the financing arrangement. Thomas.
I was gonna go on a very short rant about housing economics, but in light of
About
Housing economics. But in light of Superintendent Gall's points, I don't know that it's worth our time. So the only point that I'd make is I saw this and this stuck with me. If you graph median price per square foot on one axis, this is hard to say out loud, and then on the other axis you graph number of units built, the upper right quadrant is essentially empty. There are no cities in America where you build a lot of housing and the price does not drop. there are no cities where you both do a lot of building and housing is expensive. So to a certain extent, housing supply is good, full stop. I'll shut up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the market will react to that.
Exactly.
I mean, so
Absolutely.
the next phase of the Widener development, right? If it, a lot of this is from a developer's perspective, he or she who grabs that last market wins. And then he or she who builds the next one over, that then everything tips over.
That's right.
No city knows that better than Colorado Springs. The boom or bust nature of our housing market has been really hard to deal with. I think the good news is that there's consistent development downtown now in a way that has not existed. I might have gone to the opening night of Jose Maldoun's when I was a cadet or back here as a young officer, and it either opened in the late 80s or early 90s. And Jose Maldoun's and the neighborhood, the 4 or 5 units around it, have not significantly changed since the late 80s and the late 90s. But now, if you go away for the summer and you come back, there are new places to live, there are new places to work, there are new places to entertain downtown. Downtown is thriving. If this one or other one is a bridge too far, the market will react to that.
Well, and I would just point out that in analyzing the market, one of the things we saw is everybody talks about there's a lot of product coming online over the next year and a half. A lot of housing products that were started downtown that are gonna come to completion. The problem is, from a community perspective, there's nothing new in the pipeline following that on. So our project is gonna take 2.5 years to build. So when we did the market analysis and looked out as to all the stuff that's gonna come online and then be completed between now and then, that stuff will get absorbed over the next 2 years. And then based on our analysis, in 2.5 years, once we start construction of this, so you're talking 27, this thing coming online at the earliest, that there will then be that gap that's starting again, and our product would be well timed to fill a portion of that gap.
Fun stuff.
And remind me also, and the board too, when this project started, it was not 27 stories, it was
37.
37.
And it didn't pencil.
And it didn't pencil, and it didn't have the 100% AMI units in it either. So the project has been revised, worked.
And that's
and
probably
we've listened to
because
feedback
of, yeah,
in the
feedback
process. We
and the
listened to
market
feedback,
analysis.
and we recognized people we were going a bridge too far. It didn't pencil in the markets for what they were looking for. So we got feedback from the markets as well, saying what they thought Colorado Springs is ready for. So therefore, what they're willing to put their money into. So there's a whole lot of factors that came into play. And so this is where we settled. Like I said, it's about 50 feet taller than the existing building. So is it a little taller? Yes. Is it dramatically taller? No. Is it the tallest structure that's been in downtown Colorado Springs? No. Because actually the smokestacks at the old Drake plant were taller than this building will be.
How many stories is the Antlers, anybody?
14, I think, is the tallest downtown.
The Wells Fargo is the biggest. It's 16 stories, and then it has stuff on top of it that extend that. The difference is commercial plates, the heights in a commercial building are taller than in a residential building. That's why when people talk stories and compare them, it's not comparable between commercial and residential because of those height differences.
Okay.
So it's 247 for the Wells Fargo.
What is it?
Wells Fargo's 247, this project's about 300. The exact, it could vary a few feet, plus or minus once you get to the final.
250 to 300 is easy.
Yeah, so it's about 50 feet difference roughly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on your slide about in the financial analysis, not this slide, but another one, it mentioned that Pikes Peak Library District is in for only 50% and the Downtown Authority for 60%. Why?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about that. So they don't get backfill from the state. So there is no, so because we're gonna be creating, one of the things that we've worked with the library district is, especially around residential units, they don't wanna see residential units, they just wanna see commercial units. And the reason why is because residential means more people using the library, which means they have to service those people, which means they're not getting increment for it. So with a project like this, they're more than happy to work out something where they give up 50, then they get 50 back, and then it's a win-win for both scenarios. So it's just a way to somewhat backfill them for supporting a project and being able to service all the new residents in the area.
And I would just say from our side, we really were only targeting the amount of money that got us to that rate we needed to get to.
And we didn't need it, yeah, that wasn't
Downtown
a piece.
Development Authority.
The Downtown Development Authority, they're the ones that are gonna be marketing that area. They've got the, they've got their security patrols that go around, so they do a lot of programming on the street side, cleanup, et cetera, that's gonna be in this area, so that's why they get a piece of that as well. And again, it's a way to make it a win for them too. So, when we do these projects, we're never wanting to leave any taxing entity high and dry, right? We wanna create win-win scenarios where if this wasn't built, they're actually gonna get less. By this being built, they're either gonna be equal or they're getting a gain.
I'm also just gonna use feedback that in all the years you've come to us,
Mhm.
And I asked you before, how many families do you think would actually move in, and you didn't have an answer then. I realize you can't have an answer, but I am an incredible cynic. I'm gonna say that for the record, that families will be moving in here. The families I know are often strapped for cash, and they're not gonna be able to put 3 kids and a single parent in a 400 square foot studio apartment.
Correct, that's
And
correct. We expect
so-
those to be singles or couples.
I would hope so. And that 16% or below, AMI, can that go up after 25 years then? That might
Could,
change?
yeah, the agreement is for the 25 years.
25
So,
years.
yeah, for
Right.
URA designation, we're gonna force that. So as long as it's under our control, we will force that piece of it. Once it goes out of our control, then the taxing entities are getting 100%, and it's kind of up to them if they wanna do something else with it, or if they wanna figure out a way to get back to the project for that to continue to be offered. But from the URA standpoint, that was our enforcement.
Alright, so no guarantees at all, really?
After 25 years.
Right.
That's for any
25
project.
Yeah.
There is no
Yeah.
guarantee.
Okay, alright.
And that's even, that federal is even like 25 to 30 years, so that would be the same thing if this didn't have any URA dollars.
Okay. Just going back to families. I'm glad you didn't emphasize that, because I don't believe it for a minute that
Yeah.
families
We
are
think there will
moving
be
into
some in
this.
some of those mid-size units, but yeah, that's not the main. For us, again, workforce was a big part of our motivation behind this project, is getting different, it's a different workforce than what Toby's project is gonna attract and support, but it's still a workforce this community needs, including, we do believe some of the folks that work in your district would have interest in it. Because again, they could walk, they could ride their bike over to the school that they're working at. That would be attractive to some people.
It's another option.
Alright, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none at this time, the retail businesses that go in there, right now you don't have anything set in stone as far as what.
No, we don't have anything specific line, because again, it's a 2.5 year build, and we're not even to breaking ground yet, that's probably next year. So no business is gonna sign up for something that's 3+ years out. It's too early for them to commit.
Okay. Again, like what we talked about with Toby's project, if the board approves this TIF agreement, is there ways for our students to benefit from this project? Are there opportunities for our students to enter at the ground level and learn about some of the finance mechanisms or the architecture, the build, the design? Any way that we can get our students to engage in it, please, engage with Superintendent Gall and his team. I would like to see our students benefit from this. If this is a workforce thing, you are talking about BlueStack and some of the other companies out there. Is there apprenticeships that our kids can serve in that sphere with your group of companies, whether it's BlueStack or in this project, internships, construction work that our kids can learn?
Absolutely, yeah.
Numerous opportunities where our students can benefit.
Yes, so absolutely through the companies in the Catalyst Campus Network, absolutely, because those companies are doing those kind of programs, and we are happy to work to how do we expand those kind of things for the project itself. But we would absolutely love to do that. I just earlier today was at an event where I saw all the programs, all the various types of programs that School District 11 offers, which I was not aware of all of them for different trades and careers pathways. And so we would like to learn more about those programs and figure out how can we connect to that? Because again, it's going to be something different. It offers unique opportunities for students. It's going to be a lengthy project, so.
Well, it's a high profile one, which makes it sexy for students.
Everyone knows what that is. Dwayne and the counterparts in D49 presented kind of a CTE pathways vision to the Titans group today downtown.
Okay,
Just for
great.
board members to understand what
Yeah.
the reference point was to our CTE programs.
It is a big emphasis from this board that when we talked about the board priorities before, we walked in different pathways in which we provide our students experience in the real world environment, experience with internships, apprenticeships, and you are part of the business community. You are in the boardroom now, so I can make that ask of you. And if you can work with Superintendent Gall in this and ensure that our students get exposed. There are pipelines through which our students get exposed to the business sector, the city level.
Well, I mean, not just things like construction are obvious, but for example, because of the concierge aspects that this project will have that are a part of the project, the hotel kind of lodging industry type of programs that you all have would make perfect sense to get involved into that program. So I think there's different aspects. We just have to sit down and have the conversation with you all and explore what those opportunities
And
are.
all of our projects
Yeah.
are open to that. Just
And then I would also say, like when you were showing all the amenities that 3 years from now, you have it. You have a conference room out there. So Superintendent Gall is always looking for areas where he can host his teachers or staff or things
Well,
of
we
that
also,
nature.
at that Catalyst campus, there's a lot of conference and spaces there, so that's always open to you, sir.
Happy to engage.
Okay. Any opportunity where the staff, our students, and can benefit from.
We host companies there and government organizations there for offsites all the time in those conference spaces. So it's one of them is, the nice building is the original train station for Colorado Springs. And that's where we put all the conference spaces and shared spaces. So it's a fun space for people to go do meetings in.
Okay.
And we've got plenty of high tech there for whatever, to support whatever the needs are.
Okay, thank you. So both these projects for the board will be there at the September 4th board meeting. If you have any questions or concerns about these in the meantime, send it to Superintendent Gall, Brandon Comfort, copy Brandon Comfort in on it, and they will direct it to the appropriate group through Jariah Walker and get the answers to you. I'm hoping that we don't get into a lengthy discussion on September 4th because we had substantial discussion today and focused questions come on September 4th. Okay, and most of it even happened between now and September 4th, so you can come prepared to just answer those questions.
Thank you very much for your time, all.
Thank you,
Any
everyone.
questions?
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all of you being here and presenting and best wishes either way.
And thanks for serving on school boards, because I know you don't get paid anything to do this and sit here.
Yep.
That's a challenge.
Oh, I'm curious about that. Take it off easy. Sorry, bud. Did you adjourn us? Are we done?
We are officially adjourned at 8:08 p.m. Melissa?